Greetings, 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 greetings. It is I, King Clifford Jefferson, of Senator Godfrey, the fifth Count of Anjou, the fifth Count of Anjou, the son of Folk, the ruler of Jerusalem. I'm the reincarnation of King Edgar the Peaceful, which we know here at the Third Temple English Church of England as Jesus Christ, or the Vicar of Christ, or Melchizedek, better known as the King of Righteousness. It is November 11th, 2024, and the Berber year, which is equivalent to the year 2974. I greet you in the name of my Queen, Sister Galveston, from the House of Galveston. I greet you in the name of my officers of the Third Temple English Church of England. I greet you in the name of the heirs, successors, the predecessors, those who thought it fitting for us to be able to have something to fall upon once we woke up upon the idea of who we are as an actual people. This lesson is going to be a very good lesson because, as the saying goes, he who writes your books sets your timeline. Time never was when we were not. If the life of time began, the time will come when men will be no more. This comes from the sayings of some of the sayings of Prophet Noble Ali, peace and blessings be upon him, as well as to all the members of the Morris Science Temple of America, as well as to all the people from any group or society, whether it's civic, religious, political, etc. All right, this is a calling for you all to realize that there's a little bit more information that needs to be understood before making some type of stand in regards to the liberties and protections and the rights and the privileges, etc., that goes along with who we say we are as a people. Okay, so this lesson is regards to who we are as a people from the time of our enslavement and to the time of our freedom as becoming what we call free men. It's very important because by the 14th Amendment, we had a choice of if we were continue on to be called slaves or becoming free men like we really originally were. Okay, so this lesson is to tie that gap, to bring in to fruition of what it meant to have a choice about one's independency from one of slavehood to freedom. All right, so this is very important for all those who watch my prior lessons. This is one that you will not want to miss. This one is called New Jersey Apologizes for the Slavery of the Berbers, the Anglo-Saxon Berbers. And these Berbers, known as the Anglo-Saxons, according to the 1911 Encyclopedia Britannica, whose political science or government was known as Wittemont or that of the Wise Council, were those who originated from their homeland, which is called Nubia, which is presently today called Sudan. Okay, so we're going to dive into that history and let you know that all those who were subject to what we call the Black Codes, from whatever state the Black Codes were adopted, as well as where they originated from, which were from the Codes of Noir, which from the French rulers or the Frankish rulers. All right, this is what we were subject to once we were emancipated by way of what we call the 14th Amendment, which originated as a result of the 13th Amendment. We pretty much emancipated us, but not decide on if we were considered to be citizens because the Constitution does by no means define the word or what a citizen is. Okay, so we're going to rely on United States versus Warren Kimmel Art, which is a court case establishing how case law or prejudice is supposed to be decided in lieu of what we call citizenship exclusively for those who are emancipated from the 13th Amendment. It's not dealing with anything dealing with the Naturalization Act of 1790. It's not dealing with anything dealing with the Naturalization Act of those who will become permanent residents under the Immigration Act, under the form what we call N400, the form N400. So we're going to discuss all those things today and let you know that in all actuality, that the only people who can really be citizens here in what we now call North America are Berbers. Okay, That was the purpose and intent for the Black Codes or the Jim Crow laws to exclude the Berbers for any participation and establishing a forefront for what we call the English Anglo-Saxon Berber political government. All right. So without further ado, let's get started with this marvelous lecture. You will find nothing compared to this in any platform thus far, on any site or any platform or any school of thought will not come close to this. All right, so with that, let's get started. We're going to draw our template from a concurrent of a resolution from the state of New Jersey for the apologizing for slavery. Okay, for the apologizing of slavery and the participation that they had in slavery, uh, with the unification of not just the United States, but Great Britain, not just Great Britain, but France as well. Okay, because they also had codes governing what they call vagrancy laws. Vagrancy laws are laws governing poor people, slaves, serfdoms, etc. All right, but these terms apply to different sets of people. All right, so they must apply to who they're applicable to. So with that, let's get started. We're going to use this article from the state of New Jersey to draw our thesis from, or our what we call um, and what they call mathematical science is called what they call that. Uh, it's called our presumption is not presumption. It's another term I'm looking for. All right, but I'm gonna get off sidetrack, so just forget that. But this is where we're gonna draw our conclusions from. It's this article from the state of New Jersey, originated from the House, Senate, and the General Assembly. Okay, and we're gonna draw from this article alone and support it. We're going to support this article by other material genuine facts that cannot be disputed by anyone. Okay? I don't know what happened. I think the damn meeting just cut off. The damn meeting just cut off. I don't know what happened. Oh, we're still going. Testing, testing, testing. Let's see. Testing, testing, testing. Okay, we're still live. All right, my bad. My bad. I apologize. Scared me for a minute. Testing, 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 testing. Testing, testing. Mics, everyone. Testing, testing, testing. I don't think it's working. Testing, 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 testing. Testing, testing, testing. Testing, 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 testing. Okay. Testing, testing, testing. All right, we should be good. All right, so Assembly Concurrent Resolution number 270, State of New Jersey, 2012 legislator. All right, very, very, very important that we comprehend what the legislator is saying here today. Testing, testing, testing. I don't know if my mic is on. I keep hearing it, but I don't hear the. Testing, testing. Testing, testing. Testing, testing. Bear with me, everyone. I just want to make sure my mic is working properly. Let me know if you hear that. Testing, testing, testing. I mean, I hear from on the phone. You got to try to hang the phone up and do it again. All right. Just text me, let me know you hear it in the chat. All right. Testing, testing, testing. I'm just checking to make sure the sound is all right, everyone. Testing, 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 testing. All right, thank you. All right, so we'll be starting in a second. Okay, let's see. Synopsis expresses New Jersey's profound regret for its role in slavery and apologized for the wrong inflicted by slavery and its after effects in the United States. Okay? The synopsis is expressed by New Jersey's profound regret for its role in slavery and apologizes for the wrongs inflicted by slavery and its after effects in the United States. This came before the legislature in 2007, November 8th, 2007. All right, resolution number 270 from the state of New Jersey, 2012 legislator. Everyone needs to download that because it's going to be very important. It's going to make an impact upon your understanding in this lesson. All right, when they put something in a legislator or a joint resolution or a bill or legislative constitution or anything for that matter in regards to some law, you need to define the meaning and the terms. Okay, especially words that stick out. All right, so that's what we're going to do today. We're going to go in depth and look about what New Jersey say about their role they had to play in the time of slavery. Okay, because most of it is loosely interpreted based upon the face of the document. All right, we need to go in depth of it and see the role that New Jersey played before New Jersey even became a state in regards to the policies that they're given for the role that the state now played in slavery. But at that time was not called a state. It was called a colony. And prior to the colony, they were under the authority of what we call the British Crown, which was incorporated in the colonies form of municipal policies or municipal laws, which you are governed by now, which pretty much sets your civil status. Under English common law, you have two forms of status. You have a political status and a civil status. This is going to be talked about in the United States versus Juan Kim Art, which is the case law in governing how interpreting law or interpreting prejudice is supposed to be understood in regards to the judiciary's inquiry. All right, so it's very important that we understand what's being said to you and not overlook it or look down upon it. But within it is the salvation that we all deem and strive for in regards to understanding what the purpose of striving for in regards to be at the end of the line, i.e., the victory lap. All right. Greetings to you, Counter Searching from the House of Search. God, you was able to join us today. Make sure you moderate, keep those knuckleheads off the chat line, and it's going to be a good lesson for you today. All right. This is for the benefit of the English, Anglo-Saxon Berbers, whether you're here in what we call New Jersey or whether you're over what you call Sudan. Okay. Sudan, formerly called Nubia, it goes all the way back to what we call the 45th dynasty of the what they call the Black Pharaohs. Okay, these were Berber kings. All right, without a shadow of doubt, non-disputable genuine material fact that cannot be rebutted by anyone. All right, this is a reversion of the current version of the text. We're going to read the text and we're going to use it as a measuring rod, okay? We're going to read through the text by the end of this lesson. When we read through the text, i.e. this legislative intent of this text, i.e. of this synopsis, we're going to go through history and see it for ourselves what New Jersey is trying to tell us, but a lot of us can't see it. Why? Because we're stuck in the original position that they placed us in regards to establishing what they deem as what we call citizenship, which the Constitution did not properly define. Okay, it never actually properly defined what the word citizenship means. Why? Because at the time of their defining of the word citizenship, it only had to deal with the Naturalization Act of 1790, which had to deal with the color of skin, where people with our color of skin was not included. Okay, very important. But yet, when we were emancipated, some type of citizenship was afforded to us, but it was left up for us to choose. This was the red pill or the blue pill. Majority of you have took the red pill, as a result of their presumption of citizenship versus the blue pill, which was given to you by operation of law, i.e. the 14th Amendment. All right, so let's break it down. You'll never hear it fresh like anywhere else. We're going to go real slow for all you beginners. On concurrent resolution, so it's concurrent. That means they keep amending it, all right? A concurrent resolution apologizes for the wrong of slavery and expressing New Jersey's profound regret for its role in slavery. I got to thank Archbishop for his continuous bombardment with the North Carolina black codes. Constantly hammer it into y'all, and y'all have no clue. So honor to you, Archbishop Belmont for Belmont. Concurrent resolution apologized for the wrong of slavery and expressed in New Jersey profound regret for its role in slavery. Now look how far they go back. New Jersey and the representative of New Jersey wasn't even sitting in office if you're going back to 35,000 BC, all right, in ancient Mesopotamia. It said, whereas slavery has been documented as a worldwide practice, meaning it was worldwide, all right, since antiquity, dating back to 3500 BC in ancient Mesopotamia. And whereas during the existence of the Atlantic slave trade, millions of Africans became involuntary immigrants to the New World. Okay, so they went from 35,000 BC, Mesopotamia, all the way to the Atlantic slave trade, where he specifically mentioned a specific type of people, Africans, okay, in the New World, not the Old World. They talk about here in the New World. New World is what you now call today North America. When it says millions more died during the passage. First African slaves in North American colonies were brought to, they said what, y'all, Virginia, Jamestown in 1619. And whereas the Atlantic slave trade was a lucrative enterprise, and African slaves a prized commodity to support the economic base of plantation in the colonies, were traded for tropical products, manufactured goods, sugar, molasses, and other merchandise. So that means that you were equal to merchant sugar, molasses. So something means if somebody had a can of molasses or a bag of sugar, the equal exchange for that will be you. Okay, we must look at the totality of what we're looking at. Okay, so it said we had just as much as equal status as a bag of sugar or a bag of molasses or any other merchandise that we use in the process of what we call commerce. All right, very important. Oh yes, I'm going to break it down. Now, when they talked about the Atlantic slave trade, we can't forget about the Sub-Saharan slave trade. Okay, you had two. You had the Atlantic slave trade, and then you had the Sub-Saharan slave trade that preceded that. That goes back into what we call the slave of the Berbers. Okay, because when we get into the Maghreb, that was inhabited by Berbers. All right, whether you're dealing with it from Sudan, which is by the Nile River, or west of the Nile, which would be the coastline of what we call North Africa. Okay, and all these were traditionally African or black Berbers. The latter two, it needs to be fall out of disuse. But they were Berber ancestries from what we call Northeast Africa, not from Arabia. Okay, very important for you to comprehend that because they're going to qualify it. Some Africans, let me read that again. Africans enslaved a prized commodity to support the economic base of plantations in the colonies, were traded for tropical products, manufactured goods, sugar, molasses, and other merchandise. And whereas some African captives resisted enslavement by fleeing from slave forts on the West Africa coast, and other mutinized aboard slave trading vessels cast themselves into the Atlantic Ocean or risked the cruel retaliation of their masters by running away to seek freedom. Okay, to seek freedom. Whereas, although the United States outlawed the transatlantic slave trade in 1808, the domestic slave trade in the colonies and illegal importation continued for decades. And whereas slavery or the peculiar institution in the United States resembled no other form of involuntary servitude, as Africans were captured and sold at auctions as chattel like inanimate property or animals. Now, this before we get there, we at 27. Before we continue on with this, let's just go to the Dred Scott case. Let me get my battery before my battery go dead. My charge. We're talking about a transition from slavery to emancipation to citizenship. From slavery to emancipation to citizenship. That is the timeline. Okay? They created a timeline for us when they just mentioned that North America's role in it, in New Jersey specifically, goes back to 3500 BC. Okay? And then it makes its way, and they didn't even thought to mention the Sub-Saharan transatlantic slave trade because they wanted you to forget about the Sub-Saharan transatlantic slave trade and concentrate on the Atlantic slave trade. Okay? That's what they want you to focus on, but we ain't going to do that today. All right? We are not going to do that today. Let's just get our history going back to the Dred Scott case because this also involves us as African or Black people. Look what they say in the actual Dred Scott case. Okay, in regards to the status, the civil status, not political status, because under English common law, every subject is afforded two statuses. The political status, i.e., under the national political laws of the country, or a civic status, which is the laws of the municipality by virtue of the municipality being overthrown, because we know that the origin of the municipal law of the common law of England is what we call, we know that the municipal law of common law of England is the law of England, okay? This is what you most have a relationship in your modern government is on the municipal level. So we must comprehend that. But it says in the Dred Scott case, and I quote, to the position that slavery can only exist except under the authority of law, it is objected that in few, if any instance, has it been established by statutory enactment. This is no answer to the doctrine laid down by the courts. Almost all principles of the common law have their foundation and usage. Slavery was introduced into the colonies of this country by Great Britain at an early period of their history, and it was protected and cherished until it became incorporated into the colonial policy. Did you hear that? It is immaterial whether a system of slavery was introduced by express law or otherwise, if it had the authority of law. This is called positive law. We have positive law now. There is no slave state where the institution is now recognized and protected by statutory enactment and judicial decision. This is called positive law, y'all. Slaves are made property by the law of the slave states, and as such are liable to the claims of the creditor. They descend to heirs, are taxed, and in the South they are in subject of commerce. Did you understand that? Okay? You must understand that your status as an heir has nothing to do with your political status, but your civil status as a result of how they classify you based upon your citizenship. Once they freed you and emancipated you from being an inanimate object like a bag of groceries or a bag of chips floating on the street or anything, all right, then they put you into a classification of a lower status than their status based upon how they classify themselves under the Naturalization Act of 1790. Okay? We go to Enway Ahmad Hassan, which I constantly go to, and tell you that they had their Nationality Act based upon the status of citizenship, which has nothing to do with your nationality or your foreign status. Okay? It only has to deal with an oath of allegiance, which pretty much comes to nationality, whether you're a national or foreigner. It all comes back down to an oath of allegiance. Okay? So we see here that it clearly says in the Dred Scott case, no one could dispute this, and this pertains to Dred Scott, who was a slave by who? The Great Britain monarch, i.e., the monarchs of Scotland. Not England, but of Scotland. Because in England, you were free. And based upon the case law, prejudice governing citizenship, and how it should be interpreted based upon prejudice, is based upon English common law. If you're not using English common law, then guess what? They're pretty much saying that you are a slave. Just different status because you are employed to be a slave. A slave to them is called a citizen. All right. We must comprehend that. All right. So once again, Dred Scott case said slavery was instituted by Great Britain and incorporated in the colonies. Okay, with New Jersey is no exception because we're reading the article from the legislative branch about their apologizing of slavery, going all the way back to Mesopotamia. Going all the way back to Mesopotamia. So that means that whoever was governing this land at this particular time knew the history in regards to the slavery of our ancestors going back to the time when they assumed that we were subject to the slavery going back to the Mesopotamians. All right. And then somehow they have traced that slave trail all the way up to what we call the Atlantic slave trade, but excluding anything dealing with the proof of where the slave trade actually came from in that particular territory called what we call North Africa. Okay, so as a result of that, what we call that, them dropping the ball on it, we're going to pick it up. All right, I'm going to explain it further. All right, we must understand. Let's go back to the legislature. We know the United States is speaking on behalf of all the states in the United States. We know if it wasn't for New Jersey, there would be no United States. The United States, i.e., all the states that make up the United States, overthrew what? The crown. And the crown represented the entire landmass at that time. Yes, the crown of England represented the entire landmass and the entire inhabitants who lived on the landmass, which were called subjects. All right? Were called subjects of what? The kings of England, which is without indisputable attestation, were the Berbers. They were the Berbers. Let's prove it. Whereas slavery or the peculiar institution in the United States resembled no other form of involuntary servitude, Africans were captured, sold at auctions as chattel, like inanimate property or animals, and whereas the prime Africans for slavery, the fundamental value of the Africans was shattered. They were brutalized, humiliated, dehumanized, and subjected to the indignity of being stripped of their what? Their names and heritage. Okay? Stripped of their names and heritage. I remind you that right now we're reading English. Okay? You got English letters. Okay? So whatever historian try to reclassify the people known as Berbers, or whether you want to call them Nubians, or whether you want to call them Sudanese, or whether you want to start calling them now Moors or African Americans or Black people, we are the same people, okay? We are the same people. And we can tell we are the same people because they're using the very words that they use that describe our people based upon their letters. These are English letters. Okay, so they belong to us. I don't care how you rearrange them around to make up different sayings, but it belongs to us, the English people. These aren't African letters. Okay, these aren't Berber letters. These are English letters. We must stick to the script. Whereas the prime Africans for slavery, the fundamental value of the Africans was shattered. They were brutalized, humiliated, dehumanized, and subjected to the indignity of being stripped of their names and their heritage. Women and girls were raped, families were disassembled, as husbands and wives, mothers and daughters, and fathers and sons were sold into slavery apart from one another, and whereas a series of complex colonial laws were enacted to regulate the status of Africans and their descendants to slavery. In spite of their loyalty, dedication, and service to the country, including heroic and distinguished service in the Revolutionary War, the Civil War, and all other conflicts and military actions involving the United States military. And whereas New Jersey, with many as 12,000 slaves, so whereas also the state of New Jersey passed gradual whereas New Jersey was as many as 12,000 slaves, had one of the largest populations of captive Africans in the northern colonies. And whereas in 1786, the state of New Jersey enacted a law that prohibited the importation of slaves into the state and made owners punishable for mistreatment of the slaves. And whereas although the state of New Jersey passed a gradual emancipation law in 1804, it was the last northern state to emancipate its slaves and require all children of slaves born after July 4th, 1804, to remain the servant of the owner of his or her mother until they were 21 years of age for women and 25 years of age for men. Okay? Whereas New Jersey had one of the severest slave codes in the northern colonies and was one of the few northern states to sanction the Fugitive Slave Act in 1850. We know that what Dred Scott just said, that slavery was imported into the colonies by Great Britain and incorporated by law by the colonies. Okay? So New Jersey, as well as any state within the United Colonies, were acting under the Fugitive Slave Act, that if a slave trying to run away to emancipate himself, guess what? They brought him right back to the master. Okay? Brought him right back to the master. But here New Jersey is apologizing for everything that they did for all the states within the United States prior to them becoming states, i.e. colonies. We must understand. So it goes on to say, which permitted authorities in free states to return runaway slaves to their owners, with the result that the Underground Railroad passengers had to proceed with the utmost caution in this state. What state? This state right here, New Jersey. All right? One of the greatest slave ports that they had in any port dealing with slaves was Perth Amboy. Okay? Perth Amboy, that's right down the street. Whereas in 1846, New Jersey passed a law officially. This darn scholar got a mind of his own. Whereas in 1846, New Jersey passed a law officially abolishing slavery. And whereas the system of slavery had become entrenched in American history and the social fabric, and the issue of enslaved Africans had to be addressed as a national issue. You hear that? A national issue, contributing to the Civil War from 1861 to 1865, and the passage of the 13th Amendment to the United States Constitution, which abolished slavery and involuntary servitude on December 18th, 1865. Okay? Everybody follow the rabbit hole. And whereas New Jersey adopted the 13th Amendment on January 23rd, 1866, only after originally rejecting it on March 16, 1865. And whereas after emancipation from 246 years of slavery, African Americans soon saw the political, social, and economic gain they made during Reconstruction dissipated by virulent and rabid racism, lynching, and disfranchisement of African American voters, Black codes designed to reimpose the subordination of African Americans, and Jim Crow laws that instituted a rigid system of state-sanctioned segregation in virtually all areas of life, and lasted until the passage of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, okay, and the 1965 Voting Rights Act. You hear that? Whereas, throughout their existence in America, and even in the decades after the Civil Rights Movement, African Americans have found the struggle to overcome the bitter legacy of slavery, long and arduous, and for many African Americans, the scars left behind are unbearable, haunting their psyches and clouding their visions of the future and of America's many positive attributes. And whereas our nation acknowledges the crimes and persecutions visited upon other people during World War II, lest the world forget that the very mention of the broken promises of 40 acres in the mill to former slaves or of the existence of racism today invokes the now from many quarters of any responsibility for the centuries of the legally sanctioned deprivation of African Americans of their endowed rights or for the contemporary policies that perpetuate the existing state of affairs. And whereas in 2003 AD, which is 29, I got to look at the verbiage for that, but it says in 2003, during a trip to Goree Island, Senegal, for himself, I got to scratch, a former slave port, President George Bush stated, at this place, liberty and life were stolen and sold. Human beings were delivered and sorted and weighed and branded with the marks of commercial enterprise and loaded as cargo on voyages without return. One of the largest migrations in history was also one of the greatest crimes of history. For 250 years, the captives endured an assault on their culture and their dignity. Y'all better pay attention. Small men took on the powers and heirs of tyrants and masters. Years of unpunished brutality and bullying and rape produced a dullness and hardness of consciousness. Y'all better listen to me. Christian men and women became blind to the clearest commands of their faith and added hypocrisy to injustice. We can only finally judge the past by the standards of President John Adams, who called slavery an evil of colossal magnitude. My nation's journey towards justice has not been easy and is not over. The racial bigotry fed by slavery did not end with slavery or with segregation, and many of the issues that still trouble America have roots in the bitter experiences of other times. And whereas in New Jersey, the vestige of slavery are ever before African American citizens, from the overt racism of hate groups to the subtle racism encountered when requesting health care, transacting businesses, buying a home, seeking quality public education and college admission, and enduring pretextual traffic stops and other indignities. And whereas Europeans, African nations have apologized for their role in what history calls the worst holocaust of humankind, the Atlantic slave trade and racial reconciliation is impossible without some acknowledgement of the moral and legal injustices perpetuated upon the African American. Do y'all hear this? And whereas an apology for centuries of brutal dehumanization and injustice cannot erase the past, but confession of the wrongs can speed racial healing and reconciliation and help African Americans and white citizens confront the ghosts of their collective past together. And whereas the story of the enslavement of Africans and their descendants, the human carnage, and the dehumanizing atrocities committed during slavery should not be purged from New Jersey's history or discounted. Moreover, the faith, perseverance, hope, and endless triumphs of African Americans and their significant contributions to the development of the state and the nation as a whole should be embraced, celebrated, and retold for generations to come. And whereas the perpetual pain, distrust, and bitterness of many African Americans can be assuaged and principles expounded by the Founding Fathers would be affirmed in great strides toward unifying all New Jerseyans and inspiring the nations to acquiescence might be accomplished. If on the eve of the commemoration of the 400th anniversary of the first permanent English settlement in the New World, the state acknowledges and atones for its role of slavery of Africans, and whereas acknowledging that there is a difference between wrong and right, and that slavery as an American institution was a wrong committed upon millions of African Americans, and that their descendants continue to suffer from the effect of Jim Crow laws, segregation, housing, discrimination in education, and other ills inflicted upon African Americans. And whereas the state of New Jersey, once again, I repeat, whereas the state of New Jersey, the governor and its citizens, hear that? The state of New Jersey, the governor and its citizens. When you say citizens, you're talking about a status. New Jersey and the governor and those who are employed for the state of New Jersey under the office of the governor, I don't care where you work, their citizenship is based upon their corporate domicile, i.e., their place of business. And if you are living in the state of New Jersey or in any state of the United States based upon the corporate domicile of the United States, then guess what? 9 times out of 10, you are a foreigner or you are a foreign national who are allowed to become citizen by way of what we call permanent residency. Okay? Permanent residency. So it says, whereas the state of New Jersey and the governor and all their citizens are conscious. You hear this? It ain't they unconscious. They said they are conscious that under slavery, many atrocities and gross violations of human rights were imposed upon African Americans. That acknowledging these facts can and will avert future tragedies, be they in the Sudan or other parts of the world now and therefore. They said, be they in Sudan or other parts of the world now and therefore. So New Jersey, the governor, and the citizens who make up the state of New Jersey under the head of their governor understand consciously that the role they play in the enslavement of the Berbers from Sudan, who were now transported as slaves from the sub-Saharan transatlantic slave trade to the Atlantic slave trade here to what we call the colonies of what we call New Jersey and all the other 13 colonies who make up the eastern seaboard. Okay, and as we read in the Dred Scott, that the laws that were created by slavery were incorporated in the colonies at that time. Okay, it also says in that case, if we turn our attention towards the dark ages of the world, it said it will be the white people who will be enslaved. Okay? I'm not going to go back and show you that. You can see it. It's not too far from where we left off in that case. But it said if we turn our attention towards the dark ages of the world, it will be them who were in chains. Okay? So very important. So New Jersey, the governor and the citizens are consciously aware of the slavery that was caused upon those who are now identified as African American. Okay? African Americans. And African Americans is not the nationalities of the people on the territory called Africa nor in America. Okay? Their actual nationality is based upon you understand the origin of Sudan. Okay? We must understand that. So without further ado, let's continue on with this beautiful lesson. Let's look at Sudan. Sudan. Once again, this is in English, got English letters, not Arabic letters, but English letters. Very important. So we won't use the history associated with Arabia, because Arabia is not in Sudan. Sudan was inhabited by Arabians when they immigrated there. All right. But the original inhabitants of Sudan are not Arabians. All right. We must understand that. So New Jersey is apologizing for the slave trade, going from the Atlantic slave trade to the transatlantic sub-Saharan slave trade, going all the way back to Sudan, because we got to start there. Okay, it only makes sense. All right, what do Sudan and New Jersey got to do with each other? All right. Greetings, Sharon Musgrove. Glad you were able to join us today. We understand that we got a lot of interpretations of how that story went. For the sake of the lesson and for all those who are going to be viewing, we ask that you hold your views, not saying you're wrong, not saying you're right, but hold your views, and hopefully you can get a little bit more clarity based upon the views that you have. All right. And there will be a answer and question chat at the end of the platform. If you're there, when this class is over, you're able to uh, bring forth that particular question you brought forth on the chat. Okay. Once again, thank you for being here today, but I have to continue on with the lesson. And I agree with you. There were too many people over here. And I'm letting you know that over here, we were Berbers, have always been, will be, and will continue to be. This was the land of the Berbers. We go back to what we call the Jurassic era. New Jersey was actually connected to Morocco at that time, where the name of the inhabitants who lived there wasn't even a thought. Okay? We understand that Sudan is not the name of the people. Sudan is the name of a territory associated with the people who were living there at that particular time. Greetings, Cherokee. That's a tribe dealing with natives here in North America. And once again, we know that the tribes then have a tie with the kings of Great Britain. Okay, so understand the so-called birthright here in North America as a Cherokee, which is only two types: just sanguineous and just soil. If you're a Cherokee, then it doesn't involve just sanguineous by blood. It involves just soil, being born on the soil, all right, which is two different arguments. Because being born on the soil denotes to what we call being a national or a naturalized citizen based upon a civil status. And that has nothing to do with a political status, because the political government, it was governed the true understanding of what we call citizenship here in North America. And if we go back into what we call United States versus Juan Kimmel Ark, it clearly says that citizenship should be interpreted in lieu of the light of the common law of England. So hold your question. We have a nice little time to talk about it at the end of the class, but I got to continue to go on for the sake of those who are frequent members to the platform. Okay, so once again, hold your peace. Sudan, officially a Republic of Sudan, a country in Northeast Africa, the Central African Republic, to the southeast, Chad to the west, Libya to the northeast, Egypt to the north, and the Red Sea to the east. Okay, you want to go back to the origin of the word. All right, go back to the origin of the word. Key point before we go there. We know that Sudan was called Nubia and was also called Kush. All right, Nubia, and it was also called Kush. Very important. All right, let's get down to the name. Etymology. All right, etymology. The etymology, the country name Sudan is a name given historically to the large Sahel region of West Africa, the immediate west of modern day Sudan. Historically, Sudan refers to both the geographical region stretching from Senegal onto the Atlantic coast to northeast Africa and modern Sudan. The name is derived from the Arabic word Bilad al Sudan, okay, or the land of the blacks. All right, the land of the blacks. That's where we get black people from. The name is one of the various toponyms sharing similar etymologies and refers to the very dark-skinned indigenous people. Prior to this, Sudan was known as Nubia and Ta-Nezeshi or Ta-Seti by ancient Egyptians named for the Nubians and Magi arch or Balboas. Okay? So you can use all those particular names and identities, but we're only associating the name with the political or the body of politics of these people to make our connection based upon a national status, a nationality, okay? A political affiliation with the science or the government of the Berbers. That's where we make our connection is, not because we look like them, not because we got similar characteristics, because we got similar ways. No, no. You have two statuses, one civil status and one political status. And we know that the 1911 Encyclopedia Britannica states that the government of the Berbers was written on, and the uncoded law was called that of the Magna Carta. And we know that they are referred to as the English people. If you look up the word Berber and the historic family crescent coats of arms, that name is found in what? England. Matter of fact, let's pull it up. You look up Kush, it's found in where? England. You won't find Sudan. You won't find Nubia. You won't find none of that. Let's just see. This deals with heraldry. All right. You're bearing your coats of arms, your peerage. Very, very important. If you can't connect to this, then you don't know who you are. All this, I'm gonna connect all of this. My coffee keep getting cold. Okay, here we go. Just show you this. Share. Berber. I don't know if you all, none of you ever seen this before. Berber, historical family crest and coats of arms. The history of the name Berber begins with the Anglo-Saxon tribes of Britain. It is derived from the baptismal name of son of Barbara. In some instances, the name may have also been a nickname for someone such as a Moor, a Berber, who appeared to be of North African heritage. In such case, the name is a reference to the Barbary coast or North Africa. Another source says the name may be Norman in origin, as he knows to the Barbary, famous in Old Fortress Abbey and a parish near Fallacy and Normandy. That's French. Okay? The surname Berber was first found in London. You hear that? London. Right there. Okay, so we see Berber. Berber is not just associated with what we call Northeast Africa. Okay, they was all over the world. They was in Europe as well. They was here in North America. All right, because wow, we have the genetics, we have the genetic makeup. It's called engrams. We remember based upon our cellular lineage. Our cellular lineage come back tracing the cell lineage back to the original what we call abiogenesis. Abiogenesis, understanding the cell before we became living organism. Okay, that goes back to understanding genes, the prokaryotic and the eukaryotic cell. All the genetic material of who we were as a people was inside of our genetic gene material called DNA. All right. So we have been here forever. Those who are not the gods who existed, immortal gods, they originated from what we call the eukaryotic cell, which was based upon evolution. And if you're going to follow evolution, the last thing was created was human beings. Okay? Animals, plants, all that was created. You was the last thing created. We know our person is what? Everybody say it. Our person is what? Let me part so. A noun is what? A person, a place, or a thing. Once again, a noun is a person, a place, or thing. We're talking about the word Berber. Berber is a name for people, persons, not a place, not a thing. Berbers is a name for persons, not a place or a thing. Okay? We understand that in order for the Berbers to get here, there must be a place to put them there and a thing. A thing is the land. All right? We were placed on the land. We came along with the land. All the genetic material that involved our DNA was already within the land. It's known as prokaryocyte. Prokaryocyte is what is allows what we call horizontal gene transfer. Horizontal gene transfer is the ability for extraterrestrial genetic material, i.e. DNA, to travel to what we call horizontal bound to what we call the prokaryotic cell or the karyotic cell, which allows for what we call mitochondrial DNA for evolution. And if things evolve for evolution, human beings were the last thing to be created. We must comprehend this science. All right. Berbers was always here. They were the gods. I'm going to prove it. Berbers. All right. Let's look up Kush. The name found in England. Why nobody has even made that connection? The Kushites, which were the Nubians from Sudan, were Berbers. Okay, they were Berbers. All right, they were all over the place. Let's just see. The history of the name Kush dates back to the ancient Anglo-Saxon culture of Britain. It is derived from the member of the family who worked as a maker of leather, armor to the knights of legs. In some cases, the name would be used as a trade name for a shoemaker. Further research shows that the name was derived from Old French word cuisine, a type of leather armor. Okay, so we must understand that the origin name of the surname Kush and Berber having to do with people, not a place, not a thing. Okay? The place was Sudan or Nubia, where these people lived. They were also known as the Kushites or the Kishites, okay? Which are other derivatives of the word Kush. Let's see. Kush spelling variation. Only recently has spellings become standardized in the English language as the English language evolved in the Middle Ages. The spelling of names changed also. The names Kush also undergone many spelling variations, including Kiss, Kish, Kishi, Kish, Kishe, Kush, Kushe, and Kush. Okay, these are all the derivatives of the name. Take your pick. All right, let's continue on with this marvelous lesson. Back to Sudan. The country's name, Sudan, is the name given historically to the large Sahara region of West Africa. So it's a name, it's a noun, but it's the name of a place, all right, where the actual people live, all right? And they didn't call them Sudanese. The original name of that land was called Nubia, okay, which is another a term they use. The name derived from the Arabic Bilad el Sudan, or land of the black people. The name is one of the various toponyms sharing similar etymologies and refer to the very dark skin of the indigenous people. Prior to this, Sudan was known as Nubia. All right. So let's go look at Nubia. 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 Arabic word and Nuba. all right, is a region along the Nile River encompassing the confluence of the Blue and White Niles in Khartoum and central Sudan. In the area between the first cataracts of the Nile, south of Aswan and southern Egypt, or more strictly Al-Dabab, it was the seat of one of the earliest civilizations of ancient Africa, Kemetic Kerma culture, which lasted from around 2500 BC until the conquest of the new kingdom of Egypt under Pharaoh Thutmose I. Pharaoh Thutmose I around 1500 BC. All right, so mouse is tripping. Around Pharaoh Thutmose I around 1500 BC, whose heirs ruled most of Nubia for the next 400 years. Nubia was home to several empires, more prominently the kingdom of Kush. Everybody see that? We know Kush and Kush, Kish, or spelled Cush is one and the same. All right, and these were the ones living in Sudan. Okay, the Kushites were living in Sudan, which is also called Nubia. Okay, the ancient Kushites, the ones you see in your Bible, son of Ham, Cush. All right, when you look at the TO map, you got three hemispheres. You got Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Okay, no, you got the TO map. You got Ham, Japheth. What's the other one? That's it. Ham, Asia. Let me just pull it up. I don't want to be guessing because a lot of you probably haven't seen that. So let me just pull it up real quick. This might be a long one for y'all today. This is going to be a long one for y'all today. This is how you're supposed to be taught. All right, let's see. Let's see, is it showing? Let's see. This is a TNO map. I'm trying to blow it up. Pardon so. All right. How do I blow it up? All right, anyhow, you can look on the map here. You see Asia, Africa, and Europe. Okay? Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Okay? Shem, Ham, and Japheth. This would be symbolic of Cush, the Hamathites. Okay? Japheth is where we get the Scottish descendants from, okay, or the Jews. And then you got the Asians, okay? This is Shem, all right? So we must understand that this is also symbolic. Let me show you another one. Yes, Cushite from Ham. Thank you, Archbishop. Show you another map. This is another form of a TNO map. All right. Another form of a TO map, how to look at it, especially if you're watching this lesson. If you look at this map, you see the T, you see a spear with a T in the middle of it. On top of the T, that represents Asia. Greetings, Brother Nubia from the House of Nubia. The top part of it represents Asia. The bottom left quadrant of it represents Europe, which is Japheth. All right. And then the other part of it, the right side of it, represents Ham or Cush. Okay. And if you turn it clockwise, all right, if you look at Cush, Cush would be synonymous with what we call North America, because North America and the land of North Africa was connected going back to what we call the Triassic era. Because we know anything from Sudan west to what we call the north tip of North Africa is considered the Maghreb, the territories governing what we call the Berbers. Okay, it's called the Berber territory. All right, not Asia. We know Asia was where they immigrated and migrated based upon what we call the Paleo Indians. Okay, we know, but the genetic material based upon the genetic material within the DNA, going back to the eukaryotic cell, which originated from the prokaryotic cell, going back to the archaea, originated here in North America. North America, the genetic material that started it all, the genetic material that had the life information for us as Anglo-Saxon Berbers, the primogeniture of all examples of humanity. All right, the genetic material was in our DNA. Okay, it was called engrams. All right, biological stored information in your biological tissue. Melanin. Okay, we have always been around. We were not from this planet because going back to my analogy, a person, place, or a thing, they are all subject to what we call three-dimensional sphere, subject to space and time. So if God created that noun, person, place, or thing, and we were created in the God's image, all right? And before he created us in his image down here, he created the place, thing, and humanity, all right? The last thing created in evolution. And that ain't God, it evolved through evolution, okay? Because a lot of things evolved through evolution, but it was based upon the genetic material that was programmed through horizontal gene transfer through what we call DNA. All right. And everything on this planet as a life organism has DNA. Okay. Based upon its organism, the organisms that makes it up, which means molecules, DNA, molecular structure. Okay. But when it goes back to who the gods, you must remember that by way of memory. And you are a Berber. How are you a Berber? Because the prokaryotic cell, which was what we call nuclear DNA. You got RNA and nuclear DNA. The nuclear DNA was embedded in the genetic material called a cell. Okay, we know cells are composed of what we call genes, and genes are based upon what we call um, uh, molecules. Molecules are composed of atoms. Okay, so it took a time for us to progress into the comprehension and until we knew who we were based upon our state of unconsciousness. All right, because we were put in a state of unconsciousness by our slave masters. Why? By not telling us who we were. We were the original Berbers that New Jersey is apologizing for based upon their understanding of the history concerning Sudan. Okay? The history concerning Sudan is what we're talking about now. The ancient Kushites, the black pharaohs, okay? That's what we want to talk about. So with that, let's go there. All right. So Sudan was then called Nubia. Sudan was then called Nubia, which was also called the Kingdom of Kush. First paragraph, we ain't got to look no further. The first paragraph is all we need. If you're a serious scholar, researcher, that's all you need. All right. So the 25th dynasty, it's the territory where these indigenous people actually domicile, okay? Known as the ancient black pharaohs or the ancient Kushites or the ancient Nubians or the ancient Sudanese, okay? All of these are the same people, but you can call yourself these people, but you need that body of politics. You need the body of politics to preserve the identity of who you are as a people, which should be the common law of the land. Okay? The English government, which was what we call Wittemont, which is based upon the political science or the political knowledge of the government, was that of the Anglo-Saxon Berbers. The 1911 Encyclopedia establishes that. And we understand that if they're saying New Jersey apologizing for the history that they had involving the ancient Sudanese, and the ancient Sudanese were, as African Americans back then, were called the black people. Okay, so it's only befitting. And if you go back prior to the ancient Nubians, you go back to the kingdom of Kush. All right, the kingdom of Kush. We know that the word Berber and the word Kush were both names that originated from England. Hell, you got English letters right here. Okay, they don't have no ancient letters. They don't have feathers and images trying to identify who these people actually are. They got a language. Okay, they have a language. So to go even deeper in it, let's go back into what we call the 25th dynasty. All right, people who look like us when we were at our apex. All right, let's go back that far. Before we do that, this is associated with the Berbers, known as those ancient Nubians in that area called Sudan, because there's a territory right now in Sudan called Berber Sudan. Just look it up. Berber is a town in the River Nile state of northern Sudan. All right? Northern Sudan. We know Berbers are not Arabians and Arabians are not Berbers. All right? We know Moors originated by the amalgamation or the mixing of Berbers and Arabs. Okay? We know that the 1911 encyclopedia specifically says that the Berbers are the ones who, even though they have Mohammedanism ways, that their government was called Wittenmont. Wittemont was the government of the English. So why is the Scottish monarchs who were originated in their homeland called Scotland, where the what we call the 1911 encyclopedia was created through Edinburgh, Scotland, and they tell you that the people who were practicing the government of the English were Berbers. Okay, so I mean that the government of Berbers stretched from North Africa, all right, from Sudan all the way to what we call Great Britain. All right, all the way to Great Britain. We must make that connection because they're not Arabians. Okay, we're going to find the Arabians making an alliance with Frankish and Scottish kings, going back to the old alliance back in 777. And we know that Muhammad was the founder of the opposite dynasty. All right, El Mansur. All right, and he's making an alliance with what's his name? Charlemagne. Okay, we're going to address all that right here today and show them that they are not Berbers. All right, I'm going to show you today. So we see a territory in what they call Sudan, Berber Sudan. Sudan is a territory. We know Berber is the name of the people living in that territory. So we know that Sudan is presently originated from the prior name called Nubians, and Nubians associated with black people or black folks, and they know that the black folks living in Sudan, i.e. Nubia, were Berbers because they got a place called Berber Sudan. It would only make sense. So now let's go to the 25th dynasty to bring it even more, bring it to more fruition. All right, the 25th dynasty. Let's investigate. The 25th dynasty the 25th dynasty, also known as the Nubian dynasty, the Kushite Empire, the Black Pharaohs, or the Napatans, are after their capital Napata, was the last dynasty of the third intermediate period of Egypt that occurred after the Kushite invasions. All right? Do everybody see that? 754 BC. Okay? We know Shushin go back to 943 BC. The calendar is coming down. Okay? So when you get into the history of the 22nd and 23rd and 24th and 25th dynasties of what they call Black Pharaohs or Nubian or Kushite kings, these were all Berber kings. They were all Berber kings. Okay? I'm going to prove it to you by using one calendar. One calendar to disqualify everybody else and qualify our claim. Okay? We have taken Sudan, which is the area where the slave trade initiated from, all the way over to what we call North America, and that's being validated by the legislature of New Jersey apologizing for all that took place on the Atlantic slave trade and going back to the Sub-Saharan slave trade that was actually took place on the Arabs. Okay? And they enslaved the Berber people, now known as black people, Negroes, colored folks, Ethiopians, and etc. Okay? And we're going to go back to the black codes for that, specifically the North Carolina black codes, because they originated from what we call the French codes or Code New York. How many of y'all know about that? All right? Let's see. Let's move forward. So we see the 25th dynasty of Egypt was the third intermediate period of Egypt that occurred after the Kushite invasion. That was established in 754 BC. BC means Berber calendar. It don't mean before Christ. It means Berber calendar, because the only calendar that we can use to qualify anybody's story is their calendar. Okay? Kushites ain't got no calendar. If they do got a calendar, it's the Coptic calendar. Okay? It's the Coptic calendar. And we're going to disqualify all of them because all of them are running synonymously at the same damn time. How can that be possible? How can that be possible? No one has made this connection. That all these calendars are running synonymously. Okay? And at the same time, these kingdom is ruling, our Jesus Christ is here on earth. King Edgar the Peaceful. Okay? King Edgar the Peaceful. All right? King Edgar was born in 943. 943, according to the Berber calendar, that was the time of what we call Shushin, the 22nd dynasty. Okay, let's see. He right up here. '22nd dynasty, 23rd dynasty, 24th dynasty, then the kingdom of Kush. Do you see that, y'all? You see that? 22nd dynasty, 23rd dynasty, 24th dynasty, and the kingdom of Kush. All these were Berbers. Okay? Because the 22nd dynasty goes back to Shoshin. All right, that goes back to what we call the Second Temple of Jerusalem. How many of y'all or how many teachers out there are scholars like I am? Okay? These people who were ruling from the 22nd to the kingdom of Kush were all Berber kingdoms. Okay? All Berber kings. We must comprehend this connection. If you don't comprehend it, then I got to explain it to you. Let's go further. All right? Let's go to the origin of the black Berber kings, or the Kushites, or the Nubians. They started in what? Look at the area. Look at the area, y'all. Arabia is on the other side of the Red Sea. All right? Muhammad and the Arabs, all right, from Arabia who immigrated to the west side of what we call Northeast Africa, all right? These were all the original Berber, all right? From 754 BC. Before that and at that particular time. Okay? Before that and at that particular time. So we're at that timeline. So let's stay at that timeline and let's look at, before we look at the timeline of 754 BC, let's give you the original timeline, 1 BC, because the calendar that they're associating with these Kushites or these Nubians is the wrong timeline. Okay? They're saying it's 754 BC, and we know BC means Berber calendar. right? It does mean Berber calendar. It means before Christ. All right. So let's go to 1 BC just to qualify this so everybody can be on the right timeline. 1 BC. We understand that you now have the Gregorian calendar. When I open up this lesson, the year for the Berbers, i.e., the English Anglo-Saxon Berbers, is 2974. That would be equivalent to this present year, 2024. Okay? But in 1 BC, the year for the Berber year would be equivalent to 950 AD, because from 1 BC, the year goes up. All right? So 1 BC is 950. 2 BC will be 951. Okay? So that means that the calendar is going upward. But there are correspondence calendars for every other nation who claim to be a nation, and the only way you can prove that is that you got to have a calendar. Because I always see, you who write your books set your timeline. Time never was when man was not. As the life of time begin, the time where you become no more. So if you ain't got no calendar over here to qualify your existence, then you in the world of trouble. Okay? You're in the world of trouble. So the 194th Olympics is actually the time of the Berber kings. Okay, 753 is years short of 754, the time of the ancient Kushites, the ancient Nubian, or the time of the Black Pharaohs who ruled in the land of what we call Berber Sudan or Berber Nubia. Okay, or the Berber blacks. We must comprehend now. We took it from 1 BC, and at this time, in the Berber calendar, it's 950. It's 950. Okay? Check it out. Alphabetical order, choose one. Okay? We know ab ur conditioner means the founding of a city. Now look, at 1 BC, look, it's the kingdom of Kush. The approximate date of Natakamani succeeding Amonshikagatito, the king of Kush. All right. Now I don't know if this make believe or not, but it has to be if the Berbers got a corresponding calendar that's 950. Okay? 950 AD at that, because AD means Annos Dominios, the year of our Lord. You got BC, which means before Christ, and AD means Annos Dominios. After condition, that means the founding of the city. Okay? And in ancient Greek, the founding of the city is in the 194th Olympiad. Okay? So if it's 194th Olympiad at the time of the founding of the city in 753, let's see what dynasty is ruling at that particular time. Because it's 753 BC. All right? Let's look. See how many you can keep up. Now, I've showed this year many times. A lot of you who've been seeing this still don't understand it. But like I said, you have to understand time. We always been here. Berbers must know all things. All right? We must know all things. So 753 BC, air conditioner, which means the founding of the city, which is year 1 BC. Okay? That's why it's there. 1. That would be 1 BC. But the history going back 1 BC all the way back to the origin of 753 BC all encompasses those kings and those kingdoms that they were ruling at that particular time. And it takes us back to where? The 23rd dynasty of Egypt. These were Libyan Berbers. Do everyone seen that? Everyone who like that, give me a thumbs up. The 23rd dynasty. The 23rd dynasty was the ancient Egyptian dynasty of ancient Libyan origin, which usually classified as the 3rd dynasty of the ancient Egyptian Third Immediate period. This dynasty consists of a number of Meshresh kings who ruled either as pharaohs or independent kings of parts of Upper Egypt. Okay? If everybody like that, please give me a thumbs up in the chat. Give me a thumbs up in the chat. All right? So from the 22nd to the 25th dynasty of what we call Nubia, which is now called Sudan, which New Jersey apologized for, was always inhabited by who? Berbers. Okay? They were inhabited by Berbers. We must comprehend the timeline. All right? Let's see where else I want to go with this. All right. So it's 753 BC. 753 BC, Berber counter, is the 23rd dynasty, all right, of ancient Berbers. All right. But the year is 198. Okay. When we looked at 1 BC, in the Berber year, it was what year? 950. 950, King Edgar the Peaceful is actually starting his reign. He's reigned is 959. Now, at this same time, other stories are being told simultaneously, okay, about kingdoms that's supposed to exist, all right? And the kingdoms that are supposed to exist by the people who live them, they're not even using these calendars to qualify their existence. Something wrong with that story because according to the Berber calendar, the time they're using to qualify their existence is not even the right time. All right? It's not even the right time. Okay, so we see in 753, all right, 753 was the time of what they said, 754 was the time of the Nubian or the Kushite, Nubian pharaohs or the Black pharaohs or the Kushite Empire, all right? This is what the time they ruled from 754 BC. 754 is ruling at the simultaneously, at the same time when Berber kings are ruling. Okay? Now, when we go back to 1 BC, which is according to Gregorian year, 1 BC, all right, the founding of the city, 753, and that's the 23rd dynasty. You notice on this calendar, you don't see an English king. Bring out here, do you? Not one. Where's the English here? You got the Coptic, you got the Hebrew calendar, that's the beginning of the creation of the world. 3760 to 3761 BC, the earth is just being created. So if the earth is just being created according to the Hebrew story, then that means that the Berber are already in their 950th year. And at this time, ain't no English king ruling because King Edgar the Peaceful is ruling, about to become ruler. He didn't come ruler to 959. All right. Now let's see when we have an English read now year that takes the place of the Berber calendar. And we know the Berber calendar goes back to what? The rulers of Nubia, all right? The rulers of Sudan, the rulers of Kush. All these were Berbers, but the calendar they gave you to associate with these were not the right calendar, okay? So if it's not the right calendar, we can't even say those stories were actually true, okay? We can't say they're true. We can say our story is true because it says in the 1911 Encyclopedia Britannica, and the Encyclopedia Britannica, which was an encyclopedia created in Edinburgh, Scotland, by Scottish kings. And the Scottish kings, known as the kings of Great Britain, clearly stated that the government of the English, known as Wittemont, known as the Wise Council, was ran and overseen by Berbers. And the laws, i.e., the uncoded laws, i.e., the customary laws or the traditional laws, were controlled or created by who? The Berbers, okay? But they needed a calendar. The English, according to Anglo-Saxon story, don't use the time era of 753 BC, okay? Because it's a different time era. Our time era is 950, and there's no English king on this week now year. All right, so before I go on with the continuing my lesson, let me just pull up the first time you get an English read now year. The first time we get an English read now year, when we went from Berbers to English, 1065 AD. We went from Berbers to English. If you haven't been watching my lectures, then you're not going to get this. When you want to qualify a story, you got to have calendars. (1065). Okay, we went from 1 BC. All right, 1 BC. There is no English calendar. There's only a Berber calendar, and the Berber calendar is not the same calendar they use to tell the story of the Berbers that they say came from Sudan, now called Nubia. That was an impregnated story used to confuse us, because you were already in the land of the Berbers, which is here in North America. Because if that was not the case, then why would the hell New Jersey be apologizing for what happened going all the way back to the territory that was inhabited by Berbers called Berber Sudan? And Sudan is a noun for the territory. Berber is a name for a noun for the name of the people there. Okay, we must be able to qualify this with some common sense. 1065 A.D. Annos Dominios, in the year of our Lord. Okay, in the year of our Lord. We're talking about 1065 A.D. in the Middle Ages. The Middle Ages. If it's in the Middle Ages and we in 1065 A.D. Annos Dominios, then why is there an English Greek now year? Somebody please explain that to me. But there's a Berber calendar. The year is 2015. That means in the Middle Ages, Berbers are existing. But ain't no English people existing at this particular time in the Middle Ages. But the 1911 encyclopedia says the English are the Berbers and the Berbers are the English, because the English government called the Anglo-Saxon Wittmann is the same government that the Berbers follow. Go figure. Why is nobody able to make this connection? Okay? So in the year 1065 AD, there's only Berber calendars ruling. So that means every person that was ruling in the Kingdom of England, misnomer England, all right, it's actually Berbers ruling. Going all the way back to King Edgar the Peaceful, because he was the king of the English, all right? He was the king of the English. Here go Edward the Confessor. Edward the Confessor was the king of Wessex. He was the Berber king. All right? So you see the Berber year is what? 2015, but there is no ring out year. All right? Let's go to 1066. The next year after that. See if we have an English ring out year. Who's ruling now? The first English renowned year was William the Conqueror. William the Conqueror invaded what they then call England. Prior to that, that was Berber land. Because prior to that, there was no English renowned year. The only renowned year for the English at that time came with William the Conqueror, and William the Conqueror was from Normandy. He was a Frankish king. He descended from the Carolingians, the Merovingians, which all goes back to Clovis the First. Okay, I told the story all about that history if anybody's been paying attention. Okay? We must comprehend that. So the first English freedom year that you get if you're using the calendar is William the Conqueror. Prior to that, the only people ruling in England is Berber kings. Okay? Who is William the Conqueror? First Norman king of England. So he was a Norman king who invaded England. Okay? A Norman king who invaded England. And when is the English freedom years and what did the English freedom year represent? Let's see. I didn't write this. This is why you get the English and the British confused, because the English and the British are actually the same. The original uh, people identified as English and British were the Berbers. Okay, so we ain't gonna throw the baby out with the bathwater. All right, that's why we incorporated as the Anglo-Saxon Berbers, because we got case law to tell you that the Anglo-Saxons were dark skinned. All right, and Ray Ahmad Hassan. We can also tell you that case law that the Anglo-Saxons were descendants here in North America, as heirs nationally on a political level and not a civic level. Okay? I'm gonna prove all that today. So this is gonna be a long lecture. The regnal year of the English and British miners are the official regnal years of the miners of the Kingdom of England from 1066 to May 1707 to the Kingdom of Great Britain. So that means that William the Conqueror and King James I was working together. We're working together. The Kingdom of England ended in 1707. Okay? We know William the Conqueror invaded the land of the Berbers, then called them England, but yet he kept our law in place. Okay? And passed it on to Great Britain. We passed it on to they got it from the Kingdom of England. William Conqueror passed it on to what? The House of Tudors under Henry VII, Henry VIII, Queen Elizabeth I, who passed it on to King James I, King James II, King James III, King James IV, King James V, VI of Scotland. He passed it on to who? Queen Anne. Queen Anne passed it on to who? The founding fathers. We must comprehend this tie. All right? So the regnal year represents the time where William the Conqueror, Frankish king, entered the Kingdom of England, which was actually the Kingdom of the Berbers. Okay? The Kingdom of the Berbers. Let's continue. All right. Why is this so important? Okay. So 754 BC is where the Kushite or the Nubian pharaohs or the black pharaohs, which is nothing more than what we call the Berbers, the kings of Berbers, all right, were sold into slavery and then transported from the territory on what we call northwest, northeast Africa on the opposite side of what we call the Red Sea. Okay, okay, and then were enslaved. Okay, were put in bondage. All right, from that time until the present. That's what I'm going to prove to you today. Is what I've been proving you since I've been teaching, and no one seems to comprehend. All right. So from 754 BC, which is the year 198 AD, I mean BC, because if you got 754 BC, the calendar is coming down. And 754 BC is the 23rd dynasty, which is part of what we call the Mesquest, the Nubians, the Kushite dynasty, or the Berber dynasty. All right, right there, no disputable, not disputable. You don't see an English regnal year here, but yet the Berber calendar, as we see here, the year is different. It ain't 754 BC, going back to those ancient numerals that we were talking about. The year is 197 BC, okay? Because the calendar is going down, all right? So now if you pull up 197 BC, what year would it be? 754 AD, okay? 754 AD. Let's pull it up. Very important. 754 BC, and the Berber year will be 197 BC. If you type in 197 BC, and the Berber year will be 754 AD. So from 754 BC, the 23rd dynasty of Berber kings or Kushite kings or Nubian kings were ruling, right? But then the equivalent year they got in the Berber calendar year was 197 BC. Let's go back and just make sure you comprehend that. 754 BC. 754 BC, the 23rd dynasty were ruling, i.e., our ancestors were ruling. All right? 754 BC, the 22nd third dynasty of Berber kings are ruling. Okay? Are ruling. Y'all got to pay attention to that date. 753 BC. Okay? The Berber calendar year is 197 BC. All right? 197 BC. We ain't even got to 1 BC yet. But the Berber calendar year is 197 BC. We ain't even got to 1 BC yet in the calendar, but you don't see an English speak now year here. All right? You don't see an English speak now here. It jumped from B to C. Okay? So if it's 754 BC, all right, we're going to go now to 1 BC. All right? 1 BC. Because we're going down. We're going to skip 197 BC and go right down to 1 BC. And 1 BC, right here, the Berber calendar now went down from 754 BC to 753 BC ab urban condition. We know ab urban condition means the founding of a city. That's what it means, the founding of a city. So the founding of the city is what city? It ain't the city of the Berbers. It's the city of when Rome invaded. Because at the same time we existed, Rome come into the picture. Rome comes into the picture in 753 BC. Let's see. I didn't want to go over. I didn't want to dive over into this area, but what the heck? I might as well. All right, 1 BC. 1 BC, all right, is 1 year short of 754 BC. All right, 1 BC and the founding of the city in 753 BC will be short of 1 year from the actual founding, will be 754. Let's go back to 754 BC. I don't know why. I got to take the time to show you that. 754 BC. We're back in 754 BC. All right. And in 754 BC, you see here in Europe. All right. It says Stephan II anoints Pepin and his sons, Charles, later known as Charlemagne, and Carloman, consecrating them as patricians. At Jersy, he proclaims the Carolingian dynasty holy and appears for help against the Lombards. Finally, the Frankish nobles give their consent to the campaign on Lombardy. At the same time, the Abbasid dynasty kings are ruling. All right, these were where Muhammad founded. Okay, let's make sure. Abbasid Khalifa. June 10, Khalifa al-Safa dies of smallpox after a 4-year reign. He is succeeded by his nominated heir and brother Al-Mansur, a ruler of the Abbasid dynasty. So you have Charlemagne and Al-Mansur ruling at the same time in 753 BC. 754 BC, all right? Everyone see that. There's no disputing that, all right? No disputing that. It's just BC or AD. No, this is AD. I'm sorry. This is AD, 754 AD. You got Charlemagne and you got Al-Mansur, okay? They are in alliance together, okay? It's called the Carolingian and what is it called here? I got to pull up here. Abbasid and Carolingian alliance. We'll get into that in a second. But in 754 AD, all right, in 754 AD, all right, that's if you go back to what we call the founding of the city in 753 BC. Okay, so 750 BC, we're going to go back there now. 753 BC. 753 BC, Ab Urban Conditioner is the founding of the city. But when this city is founded, at the same time, you got the 23rd dynasty ruling. These were our ancestors ruling. We got a calendar to validate it. We've been validated all through time. All right, the Berber calendar. But they put us in the Egyptian calendar when we got our own calendar down here, Berber. The year is 198. Okay, that's the true year, 198. It ain't this year. They backdated. Okay, 753. Why? Because at this time, Rome is on the scene. Right here. See that? Romulus and Remus legendary found the city of Rome, according to the calculations of the Roman scholar Vario Retinius. So Rome was established in 753 BC. But at that same time, our ancestors was already ruling. The Berbers were already ruling back in the 23rd dynasty, the 22nd dynasty, the 21st dynasty, the 19th dynasty, the 20th dynasty, the 19th, 18th, 17th, all the way down to the first. We have always been here. Berbers, okay? Berbers, Berbers, Berbers. So in the year 753 BC, Roman Relius founds their city, but at the same time they found their city, we are already here. The 23rd dynasty of Berbers. Right here. Already ruling. Okay? So there's nothing to talk about. All the proof is there. Now let's get back onto the class. Now we know in 754 AD, I just said what's going on around the world in 754 AD. If we know that the Berbers were ruling in 753 BC, Rome found their city at the same time we were already existing, but yet we have somehow maintained our existence throughout time immemorial as distinctly called Berbers, as distinctly called Berber people. Okay, not what they want us to be, but who we actually are. All right, and the people who are enslaved us, going back to what we call the sub-Saharan slave trade, going back to the enslavement of the Berbers, go all the way back to Sudan. Okay, because New Jersey is apologizing for the slavery that took place in Sudan, and Sudan was called the land of the Nubians or the land of the black people. And back then they were called pharaohs or kings. We choose to use the term kings. Okay, we choose to use the term king. All right, we're ruling back in 754 what? BC. All right, now we're in 754 AD, and at the same time we're ruling in AD, we got who ruling? The Carolingian dynasty, and the Carolingian dynasty was founded by Clovis I, and Clovis I was the founder of the Frankish kings, who were all Vikings, okay? And they had a pact with the opposite dynasty, which were those who originated from the Arab culture on what we call Arabia, which is across the Red Sea. So we got Berbers on one side of the Red Sea, and we got Arabs on the other side of the Red Sea, and they are in alliance with what? Frankish kings who are at odds with the English people who are the same as the Berbers. So I mean that if the Berbers on English soil, that would be Great Britain, they must be the same people as Berbers on the continent of North Africa. Because we know that what we're about to read now, Carolingians and the opposite dynasty originated from what we call the Arabia, which is not on the north coast of Northeast Africa, from north, any side west of the Red Sea, was all encompassed by Berbers. Okay? All encompassed by Berbers. I'm about to prove it to you. All right? From the 23rd dynasty back in 753 BC all the way up to 754 AD. Because we don't see no English king right here. You don't see English calendar on this calendar. You see a Berber calendar, the year is 1704. All right, 754 AD and the Berber year will be 1704. Okay? There is no English calendar here at all. So they are actually Berber king. We didn't get a English king till what year? 1066. And he remained English kings till what? William the Conqueror until the Union of Great Britain in 1707 with Scottish kings. And the Scottish kings were the ones who started the alliances against the Anglo-Saxon Berbers, who were actually the English people, according to the 1911 encyclopedia. Because it said they were the ones, the Berbers were the ones responsible for Wittenmont, what we call the government of Anglo-Saxon, and the Magna Carta, which is the uncode law that they follow. Now, why is this important? Let's go to the Old Alliance. Because remember, back in 754, you got Charlemagne, right? And you got El Mansur. Right there. Two names. Same year. All right? So you got to know what you're talking about. Now, let's go to the opposite Carolingian alliance. And in the 8th century. This is in the 8th century. Opposite Carolingian alliances. There was an opposite Carolingian alliance during the 8th and 9th century, effected through a series of embassies, i.e., ambassadors, consulators, reinforcement, and combined military operations between the Frankish Carolingian Empire and the opposite Khalifa, i.e., the successors, okay, i.e., heirs. The alliance is likely to have formed first between Pepin the Short and El Mansur, and later to have continued under Charlemagne and Harun el-Rashid. Didn't I just say that, y'all? Didn't I just say that? If anybody heard me say that, please give me a thumbs up in the chat. If you heard me say that. So that means that the Arabs have aligned themselves with the Frankish kings of the Carolingian Empire. If everyone agrees with me, please give me a thumbs up in the chat. All right. So the Carolingians and the opposite caliphs are in alliance together against who? Who they are against? Because we know at this time there is no English kings, because the English king don't come to William the Conqueror, and that's 11th century, 1066. Prior to that is Berbers fighting Arabs and Frankish barbarians, because the Arabs were considered barbarians and the Frankish were considered barbarians, because the word Berber is also assumed to be synonymous with Barbara, okay, when they are not, okay? They are not. The 1911 encyclopedia clearly makes the distinction between an Arab and a Berber. Okay? They makes the distinction. Okay? So let's go to the Old Alliance. Old Alliance. Old Alliance is called the Old Alliance. The Old Alliance was an alliance between the kingdoms of Scotland and France against England. Did you hear that? The Old Alliance was the alliance between the Kingdom of Scotland and France in 1295. 1295, this was based upon the Treaty of Edinburgh. Remember, the 1911 encyclopedia was created in what? Edinburgh. And they said the founders of the government called Wittenmont, called Wise Council, were a council made up by Berbers. That's the name of their government. It was called Wittenmont, and that their uncoded law was called that of the Magna Carta. That's in the 1911 encyclopedia, and those who created the encyclopedia in Edinburgh, Scotland, was the kings of Scotland, and they are at odds or in conflict or at wars with the kingdom of England. And at this time, the kings who are ruling are the Plantagenet kings: Edward I, son of Henry III, son of John, son of Godfrey from Calamanjo, son of Folk, ruler of Jerusalem, where my name, surname, to sit down from. Okay? Old Alliance was an old alliance between the Kingdom of Scotland and France. It has always been a conflict between the Frankish kings and the English Anglo-Saxon Berber kings, as well as the Arab kings. It has always been the war between the two latter. We must understand that. All right? We must understand that. Look at the alliances that were made against us as Anglo-Saxon Berbers. i.e., the ancient Nubians, the ancient Kushites, where when you call them, the true name of your national name is Berber. Okay? That's what they don't want you to know. I'm going to prove it. The dynastic turmoil caused by the death in 1290 of Scotland's 7-year-old Queen Margaret, the Maid of Norway, left the tumultuous Edward I, son of Edward Henry III, son of John, the son of Henry II, the son of Godfrey the Fifth Kind of Man Jew, the son of Folk, the ruler of Jerusalem. All that, excuse my French, shit was happening right here in North America. It was happening right here. Why? Because you can find Edward I, King of England, and statues in 2024 incorporated, encoded in New Jersey's revised statute. We're going to read about him in the case law, United States versus Juan Kim R. His great-grandson, Edward III, is mentioned in United States versus Juan Kim R. in regards to citizenship here for those who were emancipated by the 13th Amendment and became citizens by way of the 14th Amendment. Okay? It's all based upon that history, which you don't want to accept. Let's get there, y'all. These are all the coup d'ops against our ancestors, the English. Frankish and opposite dynasty, the one we just talked about, and Mansours, Charlemagne, the Mongols, Frankish and Scottish, the one with Edward I, who had all the what we call the Jews expelled from England. Yes, the Scottish were those Jews you're talking about. Franco and Polish alliance, Franco-Hungarian alliance, all the way down to the Franco and American alliance. Yes, right here. Franco and American alliance, right there. It's going to come up throughout this lesson. I took you all the way back to the first alliance, all the way up to 1778. I'm going to bring you right here, y'all. I'm going to bring you right here. All right? He who writes your book sets your timeline. I didn't come to change the law, but to fulfill the law. Fulfill the law, which means reveal the law. The law governing land, air, and water. You ain't ready for the law governing air. You ain't ready for the law governing the land, because y'all still with the law dealing with water. Okay? Amity and commerce. All this is based upon commerce. All right? Let's get there. Where we want to go. I got so much I can talk about. Let's see. All right, now I'm where I want to be. United States versus Juan Kim Art. Everybody needs to write this case down. You might have read this case, but you have no clue what the case is talking about. You will today. I see I got a lot of newcomers today, new wannabe members. Thank you very much. Pass the word. You got platforms that you're used to, that you're going, please let me know. I'll definitely like to go on them, or you can invite you to my platform, but you got to have some type of decor. All right. So as we see, United States Juan Kim Ark was a case involving citizenship. Citizenship simply means status. It's governed under Title 8 of the United States Code. It denotes to status, whether you are a foreign national or you are born national. All right? Whether you're a foreign national or a born national. If you're a born national here, that means that you are a citizen by way of just soil, being born on the soil. If you're a foreign national, that means that you're allowed to become a citizen by permanent residency. That's under what they call the Form 2, what was it called? Form 400. Let me show you that. I don't know if any of you have seen this form, the Form N400. If you don't have this in your pocket, you are not a citizen. Form N40 is used to apply for United States citizenship through the naturalization process. Lawful permanent residency, also known as green card holders, of the United States who meet the eligibility requirement can file for an N-400 form to request citizenship. In the United States, 8.8 million lawful permanent residents are eligible for naturalization. You hear that, y'all? Y'all better pay attention. Becoming an American citizen gives the same rights and privileges of a citizenship as natural born American citizens. There's no difference. The only difference is that you can't be a president. All right? If you're not a natural born citizen, you can't be president. Because based upon the Naturalization Act of 1790, it was based upon the color of skin. All right? They already know who will be eligible to act in the political forum. Right? It's based upon natural born citizen, but had nothing to do with your genealogy, ethnicity, or blood descent. Nothing whatsoever. All right. So the Form N-400 deals with permanent allegiance based upon permanent residency or natural born subjects born on the soil. All of them add up to what we call an oath of allegiance to a country that you have now been made what they call a citizen. That's the status. It had nothing to do with nationality, because nationality means a national of the nation. That takes a political obligation and not a civic obligation. United States versus Juan Kim Ark. Juan Kim Ark is going to make the distinction. Let's prove it. You have to learn to read in between the lines. Majority of our people are farsighted. The citizenship clause of the 14th Amendment must be interpreted in light of the English common law permanently. If you were free from slavery, if you are emancipated from slavery, I'm only talking about those, okay? Nowhere else. If you are emancipated by the 13th Amendment, then the only way you become a citizen is by the other two ways, the 14th Amendment or the immigration. Once again, the 14th Amendment and immigration, and according to Form N-400, is no difference in it. One just proves you have permanent residency, and the other one just proves you were born on the soil. So it says the citizenship clause of the 14th Amendment, based upon the N-400 form and the Immigration Act, has nothing to do with English common law, because English common law refers to the nationals that were there prior to the enactment of the 14th Amendment, okay? Prior to the enactment of the 13th Amendment, all right? The English common law was already there. That didn't even apply to the nationals under the Naturalization Act of 1790. Why? Because they were not English. The only way they can make a connection to the landmass was based upon the color of skin. You must comprehend that. If you don't, you are screwed, especially if once I become king. All right? Citizenship clause of the 14th Amendment must be interpreted in light of the English common law. Now that's abstract. All right? That's not good enough for me to understand how true citizenship works based upon the decision made in this case based upon Juan Kim Ark, because they use naturalization laws for him. They used the immigration laws for him. Title 8, they didn't use the Naturalization Act of 1790, which was used for the founding fathers of the colonies. They didn't use the 14th Amendment. They can't use the 14th Amendment because that only applies to what? Those who were emancipated. The Chinese immigrant was not emancipated, so he's subject to the immigration laws and all the enactments of laws dealing with those who immigrate to a country. And when you immigrate to a country, that makes you what? A foreign national, which is an act of treason. Okay? It's an act of treason. It's an act of treason there and it's an act of treason here. So if all those who understand the last word I just said, you better change this channel because I'm going to hold you liable. Okay? Let's see. So the citizenship clause of the 14th Amendment must be interpreted in light of the English common law, and thus it grants United States citizens to almost all citizens born to alien parents. So when they talk about parents, they ain't talking about your present mother or father. They're talking about to parents, the nation. the father of the nation. If you're not born by the father of the nation, you're born by the mother of the nation, which means that the mother of the nation is parental patriarch based upon the father of the nation, which is no nothing more than the attorney general. He speaks on behalf of their children, i.e., their citizens. When you're in trouble, he comes to the rescue. All right? You must comprehend what's being said to you. All right? So, with that, let's go into the discussion of the case. Ignorance of the law is no excuse. This case is going to scare the hell out of y'all. It's going to scare you. We know Edward III was the son of Edward II. Edward II was the son of Edward I. Edward I was the son of Henry III. Henry III was the son of John. John wrote the Magna Carta. He had a brother called Richard I. This is where the time immemorial come from. And their other son was Henry III. Henry III, Richard I, John were all sons of Henry II. Okay? Henry II was the son of Godfrey V, Count of Anjou, the son of Fulk, the ruler of Jerusalem. Okay? New Jersey adopted the First Amendment, which is called your religious clause, which based upon presidents. New Jersey and Pennsylvania Constitution, the Articles of Incorporation, the Bill of Rights, as well as the Clarendon Constitution. The Clarendon Constitution was based upon aside the Clarendon Act, which is based upon the court system that was put in place to protect the heirs when there was a problem involving their estate and the conveyance of their estate based upon them being heirs, which was entail, which was preserved for the crown. Okay? And the only way you have an estate preserved for you by the crown is by way of entail. So you must be an English heir. You must be a national of England, which is right here. Not over there in the United Kingdom. It's not called England there. The government moved. It was called itinerant government, which means the seat of the government moved. It moved from Perth Amboy to Trenton, where it is now. That's called an itinerant court, a movable government. But when you read Title 52 of New Jersey by statute, it clearly says that the government under New Jersey, under Title 52, is a temporary and ceremonial government, all right, for commemorative purposes. Why? Because under the Constitution of New Jersey's Constitution of 1776, it clearly says in Article 22, a continuation of the common law of England, as well as that if there was ever a reconciliation between the Crown of Great Britain and the colonies, the Constitution of New Jersey, as well as the Constitution of each state within the Union, is null and void. Okay? Is null and void. I ain't got time to show you that. I did that in prior classes. If you're new to the channel, I expect that you'll go back and do the investigation. All right. Why Kimmel Art argued the 18th of March 5th and 8th of 1897. Part so. Why Kimmel Art number 18 argued March 5th, 8th of 1897. Decided March 28th, 1898. Okay. Very important that you understand the dissent pursuant to the excerpts that I'm bringing forth out of this case, this precedent. All right. The Constitution. When I say Constitution, I'm talking about the Constitution of the United States of America. The Constitution nowhere defines the meaning of these words, either by way of inclusion or of exclusion, except insofar as this is done by the affirmative declaration that all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof, and are citizens of the United States. And this is, as in other respects, it must be interpreted in the light of the common law of England, the principles and histories of which were familiarly known to the framers of the Constitution. It says it right there. They don't ask for rights under the English common law of England because they ain't English. Right? They ain't English. But the law of the English is preserved. for when the English come back to their consciousness. How we know that? The law of England is based upon Article 22 and Article 23 based upon the Crown laws, and the Crown laws are the laws involving the laws governing the estate, which is called the Crown Estate, okay, which is reserved for the Crown heirs, which is entail, okay? And it says in Smith versus Alabama, in the same case, it says Mr. Justice Matthew delivered the opinion, the judgment of the court said, there is no common law of the United States in the sense of a national customary law, distinct from the common law of England as adopted by the several states, each for itself, apply as its local laws and subject to such alteration as may be provided by its own statute. There is, however, one clear exception to the statement that there is no national common law. The interpretation of the Constitution of the United States is necessarily influenced by the fact that its provisions are framed in the language of the English common law and are to be read in light of its history. Did everyone understand that? Did everyone understand that? Why I'm saying that? Well done, the real Patab Makis. Well done. Smith versus Alabama says that there's only one common law, and that's the common law of England, adopted by all the separate states of the Union, and must be interpreted in the light of the history. You hear that? The light of the history. So if you're looking at the light of the history, then that means that if you don't know the history, that means you're in darkness. You're in darkness, perpetual darkness. Okay? So fundamental principles of the common law with regard to English nationality was birthed with the allegiance, also called legality, obedience, faith, or power of the king. The principle embraced all persons born within the king's allegiance and subject to his protection. Okay? Why am I saying that? Because when I incorporated at the Kingdom of New Jersey, it was incorporated in New Jersey based upon our Articles of Incorporation, which pretty much sets the standard for who would be a citizen based upon our Articles of Incorporation, based upon our primary business that we were incorporated to do. Okay? So first of all, let's look at the history of New Jersey, because our obligation as the third to English Church of England is to revert the estate back to you as heirs. Okay? Which was stolen from you as heirs. When they changed you from Negro black cutting the Ethiopians, all right, under chattel slavery, all right, when we were actually known as Berbers. So that's the reason why they created these black codes and things of that nature to continue on what was undone by the passage of the 13th Amendment. Okay, we must comprehend that. So let's take New Jersey as a stepping stone to see this history. History of New Jersey before we come back to that. Slavery in New Jersey began in the early 17th century when the Dutch trafficked African slaves for labor to develop the colony of New Netherland. After England took control of the colony in 1664, Britain continued the importation of slaves from Africa. They were imported seasoned slaves from their colonies in West Indies and enslaved Native Americans from the Carolinas. Okay? That's all we need to go into. So we understand and went through the history concerning the Sub-Saharan Atlantic slave trade, Sub-Saharan slave trade, as well as it's connected to the Atlantic slave trade, which was brought over to what we now call North America by name. Okay? And we specifically talk about a territory called New Jersey as a result of the incorporation of New Jersey as a separate colony, or i.e. a separate state. And when it became a sovereign state by way of its incorporation, it was based upon vagrancy. Okay? They need somebody to work the land. All right? And who they used to work the land? Those who were originally on this land identified as Native Americans, all right, whether they were in the Carolinas or West Indies. Okay, very, very important that you make that connection, because all that go back to the importation of slaves in Africa from Africa. And most of the import from the slaves of Africa came from where? West Indies and the Carolinas. I didn't say that. They said that. Okay? And the slaves that came from these territories must have been descended from those Nubians of Sudan or Berber Sudan, which were known as those ancestors of ours going back to what we call the 25th dynasty of the Berber dynasties. Okay? One of the same people, and we are still here today. Why? Because I incorporated this back into existence by identifying with the government as well as with the culture and the custom as the English Anglo-Saxon Berbers. A lot of you here on the platform today might not know that. So let me just show you. Middlesex County, instrument number 202203844. Okay? Just like the United States got a certificate of incorporation, just like every other state got a certificate of incorporation. And if you reside in that state, that makes you an employee of the state by determining yourself to be a citizen. Citizen just means status. It doesn't denote to the status of being either a foreign national or a national of the country. Okay? Foreign national means somebody who allowed to come to that national country and become a permanent residency versus those born on the soil. But those born on the soil of that nation had nothing to do with just sanguineous because none of the people who are governing that land are ruling by just sanguineous. All right? We must understand. All right? Our incorporation has been incorporated as the Crown of England. Crown of England is called the Corporation of Soul. 161-28 says, right state under the charge of Great Britain, state from repeal. An act to incorporate trustees of religious society for property held in corporation in place thereof. So the corporations holding property by way of bona vacatina, which means it's abandoned property, is every state within the United States, and they only holding it because they assume that ain't no more heirs, which resulted from interstate, which automatically allows the state to exceed that property and then take it under its eminent domain power and use it by way of what we call adverse possession. Okay? Adverse possession. I know what I'm talking about. I'm living proof. Let's see. The undersigned, each with the capacity to contract, hereby execute and acknowledge this certificate of incorporation or articles of incorporation, okay, or charter, one and the same, wherever you choose to call it, for the purpose of forming a religious non-profit in accordance with 161-1-1-2 as prescribed by Title New Jersey Revised Statute 61-28 and 61-4. 1-4 deals with our powers that were governed under the statutory law of the revised statute, which were incorporated in New Jersey, which were the original laws coming from our ancestors as a result of 61-28. Right, stayed under the charters of Great Britain. An act saved from repeal. This act was an act to incorporate trustees of religious society for property held in corporations in place thereof. So that means that some corporations, through incorporation, has somehow stumbled upon property, i.e., real property, i.e., land, and assumed it to be their own based upon the power of what we call acquisition of sovereignty. Okay? Acquisition of sovereignty. Write that term down for those who don't know it. Article 1. The name of the religious corporation shall be the Third Temple English Church of England, King and heirs and successors. We have reformed it from the English Church of England as a result of the reformation that was done by Henry VIII through the English Reformation. All right. So what they've done, we had to undo what they have done as a result of what our ancestor, King Edward the Peaceful, which is our Jesus Christ, had to undo at the time of the Independence time reform when we were invaded by those same barbarian Frankish conquerors known as the Arabs and the Frankish Northmen. Okay. All right. And we only making notes based upon the characteristics. All right. Not saying that all Arabs and all Frankish people have those characteristics in this day and time. Okay. We must comprehend that. The Articles of Incorporation was incorporated within the state that are incorporated based upon their business purposes. All right. We don't have the same business or religious intentions. All right. Church and state is separated. So they're not concerned about our religious affairs. All right. And our religious affairs concern our political affairs because they are one and the same. Okay. So it said the name of the religious corporation should be the Third Temple English Church of England, heirs, successors, and the physical address of this religious corporation is in care of 360 High Avenue, Perth Amboy, New Jersey, province of New Jersey, the Kingdom of England. Very important. The province of New Jersey and the Kingdom of England. Just because they call it New Jersey, don't mean we got to call it that. Does that make sense to everybody? Please understand that. This is a corporation soul of royal peculiar, the crown. A corporation soul is a legal entity consisting of a single soul. An incorporated office occupied by a single soul. Natural person. We're talking about the resurrection. We're talking about the coming Messiah. We're talking about Jesus Christ. We're talking about the King of Righteousness. We're talking about Melchizedek. I am the one who fit that description by way of personifying, incarnating, all right, incorporating, all right. This structure allows corporation, often religious corporation or Commonwealth government, to pass without interruption, i.e. interrupt them, from one office holder to the next, giving positions legal continuity with subsequent office holders having identical powers and possessions to their past predecessors. If everyone understands that, please give me a thumbs up in the chat. I'm talking about newcomers, that is. Article 3. The purpose of the English Third Temple Church of England is a means for orderly transfer of ecclesiastical property, serving to keep the title within the denomination of our religious society, in order to keep the religious property from being treated as an estate of the vicar of the church. The property was titled to the office of the corporation soul. A corporation soul, the crown is the legal embodiment of executive, legislative, and judicial governance in the monarchy of each Commonwealth realm. I don't see any thumbs up, so I assume y'all don't understand. Well, nonetheless, I'm going to continue to teach. These monarchies are united by a personal union of their monarch, but they are independent states. The concept of crown developed first in England as to separate the literal crown and property of the kingdom from the person and personal property of the monarch. Okay? So all the power we had back in our ancestral days, we have them now. Why? Because this is every member of the Third Temple English Church of England. This is your obligation based upon our uncoded Magna Carta that was mentioned in the 1911 Encyclopedia Britannica in Edinburgh, Scotland, based upon the government and the citizens who reside in the government, based upon the laws of the government, which is called Wittemont. And within that Wittemont government and the uncoded laws of that government, it states, as reiterated in Clause 1 of the Magna Carta by John, son of Henry II, it states that the liberties of the English Church, first, that we have granted to God, and by this present charter, i.e. Articles of Incorporation, i.e. Certificates of Incorporation, have confirmed for us and our heirs in perpetuity that the English Church should be free and shall have its rights undiminished and its liberties unimpaired. As English kings and heirs successors, duty and allegiance to restore the periods, life, and history of the English, Anglo-Saxon, Berbers. English Church, our custom, laws, traditions, belief back to the time immemorial here in America, commemorate our saints, martyrs of the past, kings and queens, restore the mysteries of King Edgar, the peaceful known as our Jesus Christ, who I'm the reincarnation of in this day and time. Okay? You must comprehend that. Okay? So let's go back to history of slavery in New Jersey. The history of slavery in New Jersey began in the early 17th century with the Dutch trafficking African slaves for labor to develop the colony of New Netherland. This is by the Dutch. After England took control of the colony in 1664, Britain continued the importation of slaves from Africa, just like Dred Scott said. Dred Scott said the same thing. Britain brought over slave trade and it was incorporated in the colonies by way of what we call positive law. They were imported seasoned slaves from their colonies in West Indies and enslaved Native Americans from the Carolinas. You hear that? Okay, so let's get a better understanding about New Jersey's guys and gain in the importation of slavery from those who were enslaved in the territories called West Indies and the Carolinas, specifically the Carolinas. And for that, we must go to the understanding of the history of the Carolinas before it became states. Okay? We must go to the origin of the province of Carolina, which we'll go to right now. Let's see. Province of North Carolina. The province of South Carolina, originally known as the Clarendon Province, was a province of the Kingdom of Great Britain that existed in North America from 1712 to 1776. It was one of the 5 southern colonies and one of the 13 American colonies of the British Empire. See, British had an empire, all right? Then became the American Empire. They just switched the name British to America. So it was always part of the British Empire, which we know if it was the British Empire, then we must note that it must have been the English Empire as well. Okay? The monarch of Great Britain was represented by the governors of South Carolina until the colonies declared independence on July 4th, 1776. You understand that, y'all? Etymology of it. Carolina is taken from the Latin word for Charles II, or Carolus, honoring King Charles II, was first named in 1663 under Royal Charter granted by Edward, Earl of Clarendon. Edward, Earl of Clarendon, George, Duke of Albemarle, William Lord Craven, John Lord Berkeley, Anthony Lord Ashley, Sir George Carteret, and Sir William Berkeley, and Sir John Colleton. The rights to settle, land and present-day United States encompassing territories of North Carolina, Tennessee, South Carolina, Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, and Florida. Now, don't majority of our ancestors come from these areas? Because everyone agrees that a majority of our ancestors here in North America come from these territories. All right? And the slaves from these territories, New Jersey, immigrated to those states. So the territories governing the Carolinas under the province of Carolina was under the control of what we call Great Britain, which today part of what we call Alabama, Mississippi, South Carolina, Tennessee, North Carolina, and Georgia. Okay? Very important you understand that. Now, why is this important? Because you have to go on to the slave codes of South Carolina because the New Jersey immigrated slaves from Carolinas and West Indies, they were subject to what they call slave codes, and the slave codes were called black codes. All right? Very important. This is what Archbishop is so continuously focusing on TikTok. Okay? It's called the black codes. All right? Let's see. Black codes. Black codes of the United States. Black codes, sometimes called the black law. So that means that if we were the ones who slaved the black pharaohs, then that means that those black codes they're using belong to those black pharaohs or those black Nubians or those ones who descended from the ancient Kushites called the Berbers, which in the eyes of law were called or originally called the freemen. Okay? Because the word Berber means what, y'all? Free men. Can anyone agree with that? Black codes, sometimes called the black laws, were laws which governed the conduct of African Americans, both free and free men. In 1832, James Kent wrote that in most of the United States, there is a distinction in respect to political purposes between free white person and free colored person of African blood. Hear that? Just sanguineous, not just soil, just sanguineous they're talking about. All right. And no part of the country do the latter, in point of fact, participate equally with the whites in the exercise of civil and political rights. And there's difference between civil rights and political rights. There is a difference. All right. Although black codes existed before the Civil War, and although many northern states had them, the southern United States code codified such laws in everyday practice. The best known of these laws were passed by southern states in 1865, right around the time we were emancipated in 1866, after the Civil War, in order to restrict African Americans' freedoms, in order to compel them to work for either low or no wages. This is called vagrancy laws, okay? These are called vagrancy laws. How many of you heard of vagrancy laws? All right. Since the colonial period, colonials, colonies, and states had passed laws that discriminated against free blacks. In the South, they were generally included in slave codes. The goal was to suppress the influence of free blacks, particularly after slave rebellions. Because of their potential influence on slaves. Free men of color were denied the vote in the North Carolina Constitutional Convention of 1835. Restrictions included bearing arms, gathering in groups of worship, and learning to read and write. The purpose of these laws were to preserve slavery and slave society. Do everyone understand what I'm reading to y'all? All right? You better understand what I'm reading to y'all because this affects us here today. Let's see. How? In the first 2 years after the Civil War, white legislators passed black codes modeled after earlier slave codes. The name black codes was given by Negro leaders. You hear that? The name black codes were given by Negro leaders in the Republican organs. According to historian John S. Reynolds, black codes were part of a larger pattern of Democrats trying to maintain political dominance and suppress the freedom of newly emancipated African Americans. All right. So if you voted, you better think about that. What you just did. They were particularly concerned with controlling movements of the labor of freemen, as slavery had been replaced by a free labor system. Although freemen had been emancipated, their lives were greatly restricted by black codes. The defining feature of the black codes were broadly vagrancy laws, which allowed local authorities to arrest free people for minor infractions and commit them to involuntary labor. That's why you got those driving licenses in your pockets. All right. That's why they issue out a standard ID, whether it's a standard ID card or a motor vehicle driving license. When they stop you, first thing they say, ID, please, because they already know how to identify you. All right? You better comprehend what's going on. All right? These are called vagrancy laws. How many of you know about vagrancy laws? Let's see. Anybody listening? Y'all went to sleep on me. If everybody's still up with me and listening, please give me a thumbs up. Vagrancy is a condition of wandering homelessness without regular employment or income. Isn't our people in this state of condition? Vagrants usually live in poverty and support themselves by traveling while engaging in begging, scavenging, or petty theft. In Western countries, vagrancy was historically a crime punishable with forced labor, military services, imprisonment, or confinement to dedicated labor houses. These are called workhouses, okay? These are called workhouses. So they think that we as the people are vagabonds or vagabonds, all right? And the only place befitting for us is what? Workhouses. We must understand what's going on. So if these laws apply to black people, all right, as some form of disfranchisement and their assistance or their flight to participate in government, but as well as preserve the government, that means that they're screwed from the door based upon these black codes, which are codes for vagrancy, all right? And that's very important because you have specifically go to the codes of North Carolina and South Carolina because here in New Jersey, these is where the slaves were immigrated to, all right, from North Carolina and South Carolina. So let's go look at the laws of of South Carolina in regards to the black codes that United States took upon themselves to make sure that they kept us occupied by working our asses to death. Let's see. Negro laws of South Carolina. Negro laws of South Carolina. I'm just going to read the legacy. I mean, the content for the sake of the other information I got to get across to you guys today. This is an excerpt from the Negro laws of South Carolina. The following is an excerpt from the first page of the first chapter of the Statutes of the Negro, his rights and disabilities. All right. This is after your emancipation. Okay. We know that the United States versus 1 Kim Ark says that citizenship should be determined based off English common law. They're not using English common law. They're using black codes to determine your legal status. Okay? You must understand that because they know if you use your political status, then that was your window of opportunity because your window of opportunity was based upon your political status by the laws of the common law of England, which was the law of the Berbers. Okay? That's why they kept you enslaved. Why? Because the black code concerned the laws governing the confinement of slaves, the limitations on slave activity. Okay, and these slaves were identified according to this black code as Berbers. Okay, as Berbers, the same ones that are imported to New Jersey, as well as all up and down the North Coast, as their relation to the Atlantic slave trade and the what they call sub-Saharan slave trade, dealing with our ancestors who were on or in the area called sub-Saharan parts of called Sudan, i.e., Berber Sudan. Okay, well, we must understand they're talking about us. Section 1 of the Negro Laws of South Carolina. Section 1, the Act of 1740, Section 1 declared all Negroes and Indians, free Indians in amity with this government, Negroes, mulattoes, and mestizos who now are free accepted to be slaves, the offspring to follow the condition of the mother, part 2 sequitur being trimmed, and that such slaves are chattel personnel. You hear that? Such slaves are chattel personnel. Section 2, under this provision, it has been uniformly held that color is prima facie evidence that the party bearing the color of a Negro, mulatto, or mestizo is a slave. But the same prima facie results does not follow from the Indian color. Okay? Section 3. Indians and the descendants of Indians are regarded as free Indians in amity with the government until the contrary be shown. And the second provision of Section 1 of the Act of 1740, it is declared that every Negro, Indian, mulatto, and mestizo is a slave unless contrary can be made to appear. Yet in the same, it is immediately thereafter provided that Indians in amity with this government, except in which case the burden of proof shall lie on the defendant, that means you, that is on the person claiming the Indian plaintiffs to be a slave. The latter clause of the provision is now regarded as the furnishing rule. The race of slave Indians or the Indians not in amity to this government. The state extent is hence the provision upon itself. The race of slaves Indians or of Indians not in amity to this government, the state, its extent and hence the previous part of the proviso has no application. Section 4, focal point. The term Negro is confined to slave Africans, the ancient Berbers, and their descendants. It does not embrace the free inhabitants of Africa, such as the Egyptian, Moors, or the Negro Asiatic, such as Lascar. Did you hear that? Did you hear that? The term Negro, they were specific about who were these slaves being specifically brought over to North America, going back to the Atlantic slave trade and the sub-Saharan slave trade, going back to those Native Americans, i.e. African Americans, who go all the way back to what we call Sudan. Sudan, the land of the black Berbers, the land of the Berber kings, okay? And these were the Anglo-Saxon Berbers, i.e. the English people, all right? Because it's preserved in your law, okay? It's preserved in precedents, all right? Why I know it, I'm going to show you, all right? So we see that the laws governing the black codes, not just for the states, but the United States, were all concerning Berbers, okay? Berbers. All right. And we understand that as a result of us being kicked out of our homeland, of course we fall under the category of vagrant laws. Okay. When when we were in our homeland, we set the standards for vagrant laws for those who immigrated to the land. And we know we understand English history and English law and English custom. There was a lot of people who immigrated to the land called England by way of either by force or either by way of conquest or either by way of conquering or either by way of discovery or either by way of immigration. All right, we understand that a lot of settlement took on in the territory called England, where you're talking about if it was over there or over here, is still going on today. Not inhabited by the original inhabitants called Berbers, who were the original inhabitants of that territory, but foreigners who are not Berbers. Okay, let's move on with this marvelous lecture. So we had set laws, all right, and govern the laws of vagrancy based upon who those who are considered foreigners. This was a form of what we call serfdom. Okay, this goes back to the laws passed by who? Edward III. All right, Edward III, the son of Edward II, the son of Edward I, the son of Henry III, the son of John, the son of Henry II, the son of Godfrey V, Crown of Anjou, the son of Folk, the ruler of Jerusalem. So the ordinance of labor, i.e., the law governing vagrancy, was a law governed by our ancestors to govern labor of people who immigrated to the country, as well as what resulted at that time in that era as a result of what we call the Black Death. Okay? The Black Death. All right? The Black Death was not just in England, but it was all over the world. Okay? We must comprehend that. And I'm thinking that when they talk about the Black Death, it's synonymous with us, the black people. The death of those black Berbers. All right? I don't think it had anything to do with any type of plague. I don't think it had anything to do with any type of viruses or whatever the hell they try to talk about. I think it had to do with the actual uh, uh, um, disinheritance of those known as the English Anglo-Saxon Berbers. All right, everyone hold that thought. Well said, Countess Cersei. Our road leads here. Ordinance of Laborers, 1349. This is right before the 100. This is around the time of the 100-Year Wars. Okay, Edward III was the son of Edward II, the son of Edward I, the son of Henry III. All of these are Plantagenet kings. All right, which we find right here in New Jersey statutes. So we're here in New Jersey statute. We know New Jersey enslaved those Anglo-Saxon Berbers, i.e. the English Berbers, who were now identified as Negro black colored Ethiopians, because they knew that those nigger people known as Negro black colored Ethiopians were the actual Berbers from what they call Sudan, which is a modern name, which goes back to the original name, or not the original name, Nubia, but the name prior to it be called Nubia, which was the land of the ancient Kushites, which were the lands of the Berbers, because they go back to the 25th dynasty of the what we call the West Berbers or Libyan Berbers. So in fact, they are Berbers. Okay, Berbers. Ordinance of Labor 1349 was a law passed by Edward III and often considered to be the start of English labor law. Specifically, it fixed wages and imposed price controls required that all under the age of 60 to work, prohibited the enticing away of another servant in other terms. This was called serfdom. Serfdom were a form of slavery. It was not the slavery we had here or were used to in the time of the uh, from the what they call Atlantic slave trade, but it's pretty much a person that worked on the land, okay, and was hired to do a job. All right, so there was nothing wrong with some type of servitude. Okay, hell, we're servitude to our government. All right, if you don't go to work, you don't eat. All right, the government ain't gonna just feed you. We must comprehend that. This all came about through what we call the agricultural economy of Great Britain, which resulted from what we call the industrial age. The first industrial age and the second industrial age all originated with Great Britain. Okay, all right. The ordinance was issued in response to the 1348-1350 outbreak of the Black Death in England, which, like I said, I don't think it had anything to do with actual viruses, disease, etc. I could be wrong. All right. I wasn't there back at that particular time, but I know my people was, and we ain't there no more. So I don't think it was the disease that took us out. It was y'all who took us out. All right. And that we will never forget. All right. So let's get on with this marvelous lecture. All right. So we see the laws of South Carolina, North Carolina, and all those laws that govern the territory that South Carolina was composed of. North South Carolina, South Carolina, Mississippi, Georgia, and what else they said? What else they said? Alabama, Mississippi, South Carolina, Tennessee, North Carolina, and Georgia. All this is the land of my ancestors here in the present day. All right. But yet the blood goes back even further. Okay. We have to trace our ancestors back through not just soil, being born on the soil, but being born on the soil pursuant to just ingredients, being an heir, a legal heir. Okay. We must comprehend what's going on. All right, let's move a little bit further. We know that along with the black codes that we had, as well as the black codes of North Carolina, South Carolina, all those originated from what we call the codes noir. All right, the codes noir. I know you guys heard of that, and the codes noir still govern here in North America. All right, it's which we were under the French king. Now we understand when we went back to the old alliance, there was alliances between French kings, as well as the opposite dynasties called the opposite Carolingian alliances, and they were alliance against who? The Berbers. All right, they enslaved the Berbers, who were actually the Plantagenet king in the 11th, 12th, 13th to 14th century. Okay, so we see that the Code Noir, or the Black Codes, blood descendants, well said, Countess. The Code Noir was a decree passed by who? King Louis the 14th of France in 1685, defining the conditions of slavery in French colonial empire. Okay, when they say the French colonial empire, they're talking about over here as well. Okay, before Great Britain even came in the picture, before French even came in the picture, you had Spain. All right, and Louis the 14th was the king of Spain, but had French descendancy. All right, they were outlined with the French and the Frankish, what we call the French and the Spanish crown. Okay, the French and the Spanish crown. Hell, we can go to the Plantagenet kings. Both kings, Edward the First was married to Eleanor of Castile, and if I'm mistaken, I think it was who else was married to Eleanor Aquitaine. All right, these were two Spanish and French queens who aligned themselves with the Plantagenet house by way of marriage to the Plantagenet kings. All right, I don't want to get the names mixed up. That's why I just dropped that. All right, so we see here that the code in the earth was black codes. All right, decreed by the French king, Frankish kings. All right, not French, because you had Frankish kings who were ruling over French territory, and you had the true French kings ruling over French territory. But you have to understand the line and genealogy of the French kings, all right? Because they were amalgamated by a result of what we call conflict and war. And that conflict and war goes back to the Capitan Plantagenet dynasty. Once again, the Capitan Plantagenet dynasty, which Louis XIV is sitting down from, because he was from the House of Bourbon. The House of Berbers is sitting down from the Capitan dynasty. All right. You see how well I know my history? And they were all trying to enslave the free people of color, i.e., the Anglo Saxon Berbers. All right. Let's prove it. The Code Noir was decreed passed by King Louis XIV of France in 1685, defining the condition of slavery in the French colonial empire, and served as a code for slavery conducted by the French colonies up until 1789. The year marking the beginning of the French Revolution, the decree restricted the activities of free people of color. You hear that? They were specific about who liberties, who rights, who freedoms they were to restrict. All right? Because they knew who we were. Mandated conversion to Catholicism for all enslaved people throughout the empire, defined the punishment meted out to them in order that the expulsion of all Jewish people from French colonies. You hear that? I don't think y'all heard it, but I don't think y'all understand it. So if you don't understand it, let's go a little deeper in it. Let's go into the history of Louis XIV being part of what they call the French colonial empire. What is the French colonial empire? Let's see the extent and territory of the French colonial empire. Look at it, y'all. Look at it. The French colonial empire comprised of overseas colonies, protectorates, and mandated territories that came under the French rule from the 16th century onward. So this is part of the French king's jure regalia. Overseas territory is called jure regalia, okay? Over what they call a radical title. Anybody ever heard of a radical title? This is what they have, all right? And this was based upon the Code of Noir that governed the French colonial empire, including here in North America, as well as in Africa, okay? As well as on the Iberian Peninsula. Look at the territories that they're governing, all right? I ain't got time to read all this for the sake of the lesson. Let's move forward, all right? So the French colonial empire was governed by black codes that were created by who? Louis XIV. Who was Louis XIV? Let's go back and see. Louis XIV of France. Louis XIV of France, also known as Louis the Great or the Sun King, was king of France from 1643 until his death in 1715. He verified the reign of 72 years and 110 days as the longest of any sovereign. You hear that? The longest of any sovereign. He was from the house of what? Bourbon. The house of Bourbon. Let's just look at it before I cut to my closing. House, the house of Bourbon. Okay, everybody see that? So just look up the house of Bourbon. The house of Bourbon. House of Bourbon is a dynasty that originated in the Kingdom of France as a branch of the Capitan dynasty. The royal house of France, Bourbon's kingdom, first ruled France and Narvaez in the 16th century. A branch descended from the French Bourbons came to rule Spain in the 18th century, and it's the current Spanish royal family. So he has French and Spanish descendancy, known as what they call the Capetan dynasty. And the Capetan dynasty had results in a war between who? The Plantagenet king and the Frankish kings, who enslaved the black people, all right? The colored people, i.e., the Berbers, all right? The colored people, the black people were actually those who were called Berbers at this time in the Middle Ages through what we call conflict with the Capetan dynasty, which were of lighter complexion, okay, versus the darkened complexion, all right? And we see that because we know that the Abbasid dynasty and the Carolingian dynasty, which birthed the Capetan dynasty, were in alliance together as well, okay? And they all had a hand in enslaving the Berber noblemen from what we call Nubia or Kush, now called Sudan. Okay, there's no disputing these indisputable facts. Okay, so the House of Bourbon, which Louis XIV descended down from, was from the Capetan dynasty, and they all descended from what they call from the 100-Year War. You see that? Let's see. And that ended in the Treaty of Paris of 1295. So the Treaty of Paris of 1763, the Treaty of Paris of 1783, all those treaties are irrelevant because there was an original treaty going back to 1259 with the belligerent parties, the kings of England, i.e., the Anglo-Saxon, versus those Frankish, Scottish, um, Muslim invaders who invaded the land and enslaved the original inhabitants, which were the actual English. All right, we must comprehend the timeline. The first 100-Year War from 1159 to 1259 was a series of conflict and disputes between the High Middle Ages, during which the House of Capet, rulers of the Kingdom of France, fought the House of Plantagenet, also known as the House of Anjou, or the Angevin, who were rulers of the Kingdom of England. You hear that? The rulers of the Kingdom of England. The conflict emerged over the Plantagenet-held Angevin Empire, formed by Henry II of England. Henry II was the son of Godfrey V, Count of Anjou, son of Fulk, ruler of Jerusalem. Henry II's wife was Eleanor of Aquitaine, okay? A Frankish queen. Let me see. I think that's right. I was going to make sure. I got so many names in my head, but I'm going to make sure I got it right for all those so you can know your king what he's talking about. Henry II was married to who? Was it Eleanor of Aquitaine? Let's see. Yes. No. Eleanor of Aquitaine. Right there, spouse, Eleanor of Aquitaine. She was a Frankish king. So you have to know what you're talking about. All right? Henry II was married to Eleanor of Aquitaine. His great-grandson, Edward I, was married to Eleanor of Castile, whose father was Ferdinand from the King of Castile, which were all governing territories here in North America called New Spain and New France. And they enslaved the inhabitants that were already here called the Berbers, i.e. the Anglo-Saxon Berbers, as a result from the enslavement that took place here on this soil. Okay? On this soil. You must understand it. Let's go back. Treaty of Paris of 1259, and then I'll come to my closing of this lesson. Let's see. Treaty of Paris. Treaty. You have to be a scholar, y'all. Anybody got can get in touch with Silent at TV or House Awakening Minds or Samurai Susan SETI? Holler at them people. Let them know that they need to hear this truth. Treaty of Paris of 1259. Before you had the Treaty of Paris of 1763 dealing with the territory called New Spain and New France. Before you had the Treaty of Paris of 1783 that King George III conveyed to what they call the colonies now. All that territory actually belonged to the Plantagenet kings by Henry III. Henry III, son of John, son of Henry II, son of God, the fifth kind of man Jew, son of Folk, the ruler of Jerusalem. Okay? We must comprehend. The Treaty of Paris of 1259 that ended war. So we were not at war. Why? Because we were the what they call the spoils of the war. Okay? The reason why we wasn't at war because we were the spoils of the war. We was the property of war. But when the war ended, property must be given back. If you were a property and you were not yourself, that means that you were considered interstate because you're not an heir. So the only person that can save you is the king because the king represents the crown represents crown land, and the property cannot separate from the crown because the minor personifies it, and which is the intel estate, which belongs to you, but I can't give it to you if you don't want it. The 1259 Treaty of Paris, also known as the Treaty of Abbeville, was a peace treaty. So if you want to deal with a peace treaty, deal with this one. Agreed between the King Louis IX of France and King Henry III of England on the 4th of December 1259, briefly ending a century-long conflict between the Capetine and Plantagenet dynasty. You hear that? History. The Norman conquest of England in 1066 by William the Conqueror, Duke of Normandy, created an awkward situation whereby the kings of England were sovereign over some of the territory, but bound by homage to the kings of France for other rich and well-populated lands on the continent. Now, we just said that prior to 1066, the only kings ruling in England were Berber kings because 1066, you had the English fleet now here. 1065, you got the Berber English fleet now here, but they were ruling under the English government. So I mean that there is proof, and this is proof that what the Berbers were existing at the time in the invasion of William the Conqueror. All right, not just over there. Oh, it was over here as well because that is all associated with what we call the Anglo-Sphere, and the Anglo-Sphere goes all the way back to Asselton. Okay, I ain't got time to talk about that because I'm going to come to my closing. All right, so as we can see, everything was pretty much um, came to peace as a result of the Treaty of Paris of 1259. But as a result of that, we were enslaved again. We were enslaved again by going back to sleep. It said under the 14th Amendment that interpretation of citizenship based upon nationals, not foreigners, should be based upon the English common law. And those nationals who are not foreigners to this land goes back to Edward III, as stated in the United States versus Juan Kim and Ark. And they have a right to inherit the land of their ancestors, whether on this part of the ocean or that part of the sea. All right? It's called littoral and reperent rights. Okay? Littoral and reperent rights. You have the right to inherit either on that land, on that part of the land, or that part of the land. All right? So we understand that we are one of the same people, so all this belongs to us. But we must restore it by restoring the political government. All right? Right now, the government that's being orchestrated right now or being instituted right now are provisionary government. How you know that? Because the United States got their hand in everything that's going on in the East. United States is the head of it all. Okay? And every other nation in the nations of any country are bouncing to the tune. All right? This is why Donald Trump is the last president that you will ever see. All right? I'm going to put an end to it. All right? I'm going to put an end to it. He represents the end of times. Okay? The trumpets are now being blown. Let's prove it. One case, United States versus Juan Kim Ark. Because if you're talking about deporting immigrants, and immigrants are foreign nationals, and those who became citizens, you're still a foreign national. You're still an immigrant if you're not a national based off the laws of the country. Okay? Because that's his obligation. He was entrusted to protect the nationals here in this country. All right? Let's prove it. Let's go to the case law and close it. I had you long enough. Brief argument. This is United States versus one Kimar. Thank you, Brother Nubia from the House of Nubia, for the gesture. The fundamental principles of the common law with regards to English nationality. You hear that? We're talking about nationality and the case law in regards to citizenship from a nationality perspective is based upon English common law, which was adopted by all the states in the Union and adopted in light of its history. Okay, Smith versus Alabama. Children born in England of such aliens were therefore natural born subjects, but the citizens born within the rim of foreign ambassadors or the children of alien enemies born during and within their hostile occupation a part of the king's dominion were not natural born subjects because not born within the allegiance, the obedience, or the power, or as would be said at this day, within the jurisdiction of the king. Y'all better listen. The law of England and of almost all civilized countries ascribe to each individual at his birth two distinct legal states or conditions, one by virtue of which he becomes the subject of some particular country, binding him by the tie of his natural allegiance, and which may be called his political status. You can never throw off your political status. You can run from it, but you can't throw it off. If you run from it, that means you're a foreigner running from your nation, and that's treason. Okay, that's what they're doing. All right, they're running from their mother country, and you cannot do that. All right, so it said everyone under the English common law has two statuses when they are born. One is called his political status, another by virtue of which he has ascribed to him by the character of a citizen of some particular country, and as such is possessed of certain municipal rights and subject to certain obligations, which latter character is the civil status or condition of the individual and may be quite different from his political status. Did y'all hear that? So you have met the civil status requirement by you becoming a citizen or a foreign national here in North America, or even a stateless person. But you haven't met the political status because you have no tie to the supreme law of the land, denoting your right to even be on this land as an English national, as established by United States versus one Kimmer Art. Okay, you see how I interpret this case? And then go back. All right. And then while maintaining that civil status is universally governed by the single principle of domicilium, and the criterion established by international law for the purpose of determining the civil status and the basis on which the personal rights of the party, that is to say, the laws which determines the majority or minority, its marriage, secession, testacy, or intestacy. All right. All that is based upon how they determine your status, whether it's political or civil. If it's civil, you're screwed. If you're political, you got a good chance of getting it back. Must depend what? It must depend of he yet distinctly recognized that I gotta fix that typo. Must depend. Come on now. It says, all right, where we at? All right. And then while maintaining the status is universally governed by a single principle of domicilium, or the criterion established by international law for the purpose of determining civil status, and the basis on which the personal rights of the party, that is to say, the law which determines his majority or minority, his marriage, succession, testacy, or intestacy, must depend. That must depend upon that. Must depend. He yet distinctly recognized that a man's political status, his country, patriarch, and his nationality, that is, natural allegiance, may depend on different laws in different countries. He evidently used the word citizen not as equivalent to subject, but rather to inhabitant, and had not thought of impeaching the established rule that all persons born under British dominion are natural born subjects. All right. And Shanks versus DuPont, it was decided as appears by the record of the court on the same day as the last case, it was held that a woman born in South Carolina before the Declaration of Independence, pardon yourself, I can't stand this thing. It was decided, as appears by the record of this court, on the same day as the last case, it was held that a woman born in South Carolina before the Declaration of Independence, married to an English officer in Charleston during its occupation by the British forces in the Revolutionary War, and accompanying her husband on his return to England, and there remaining until her death, was a British subject within the meaning of the Treaty of Peace of 1783. So if the Treaty of Peace of France of 1783 can establish the right of one's status as a citizen based upon a national country, then goddamn it, the Treaty of Paris of 1295 can do the same as well. Okay? And so that her title to the land in South Carolina by descent cast before the treaty was protected thereby. Okay? Was protected thereby. It was of such a case that Mrs. Justice Story delivered the opinion of the court and said, the incapacities of femmes covered provided by the common law apply to their civil rights and are for their protection and interest, but they do not reach their political rights nor prevent their acquiring or losing a national character. Those political rights do not stand upon the mere doctrine of municipal law, applicable to ordinary transactions, but stand upon the more general principles of the law of nations. You hear that? So you got two political status, civil status and political status. The municipal law or the civil status is determined by the law that they created based upon some amending. But the political status is based upon the laws that created the nation and the laws that govern the people who make up the nation. You must comprehend these terms. The last sentence was relied on by the Council for the United States as showing that the question whether a person is a citizen of a particular country is determined not by the law of that country, but by the principles of international law. But Mr. Justice Story certainly did not mean to suggest that. Independently of treaty, there was any principle of international law which could defeat the operation of the established rule of citizenship by birth within the United States, for he referred to the contemporaneous opinion of English versus Sergio Snug Harbor, which is another case that's very good, which was above cited, and which this rule had been distinctly recognized, and which he had said that each government had a right to decide for itself who should be admitted or deemed citizen. And in his treatise on the conflict of law, published in 1834, he said that in respect to the residents in different countries or sovereignties, there are certain principles which have been generally recognized by tribunals administering public laws, added the latter edition on the law of nations. Added on the law of nations. Added on the laws of nations. I just got a phone call. I had to hang up on that. Where was I at? Later addition onto the law of nations as an unquestionable authority and stated at the first of those principles, persons are born in a country are generally deemed citizens and subject to that country. What else it says? The English statute of William III entitled an act to enable his majesty's natural born subjects to inherit the estate of their ancestors, either lineal or collateral. Notwithstanding their father or mothers were aliens, enacted that all and every person or persons being the king's natural born subjects or subjects within any of the king's realm or dominance might and should thereafter lawfully inherit and make their titles by descent to any land from any of their ancestors, lineal or collateral. Although the father and mother or father or other ancestor of such person or persons by, from, through, or under whom titles should be made or derived have been or should be born out of the king's allegiance and out of his majesty's realm and dominions as fully and effectively as if such parents of ancestors have been naturally or naturally born subjects of the subject within the king of dominion. So it's telling you right there, based upon your oath of allegiance, whether it's to a state as well as to the monarch. Your status does not change. All right. If your status is to the king, then you are a natural born subject to the laws of the land governing the subject. If you are born within the state, then you are a natural born citizen based upon the laws that make you a citizen, but has nothing to do with a country. All right? Has nothing to do with the country because the country that you call North America was occupied by foreigners who immigrated here when people who originally were nationals were already here, such as those known as the Plantagenet crown, okay? Or the Plantagenet heirs. How I'm going to prove it, let's continue on in closing. Before our revolution, all free persons born within the dominions of the kings of Great Britain. Oh, come on now. Before our revolution, all free persons born within the dominion of the King of Great Britain, whatever their color of complexion, were native-born British subjects. You hear that? Whatever color complexion, you were native-born British subjects. Those born out of allegiance were aliens. Upon the revolution, no other change took place in the laws of North Carolina than was constituent upon the transition from a colony dependent on a European king to a free sovereign state. British subjects in North Carolina became North Carolina freemen. You hear that? Going right back to those Berbers. Going right back to their Berbers. They knew who you were. Where it says British subjects of North Carolina became North Carolina freemen. And all free persons born within the state are born citizens of the state. The term citizen, as understood in our law, is precisely analogous to the term subject in the common law. And the changes of the phrase has entirely resulted from the change of the government. You hear that? I'm going to repeat. The term citizen, as understood in our law, is precisely analogous to the term subject in the common law, and the change of the phrase has entirely resulted from the change of the government. The sovereignty has been transferred from one man to the collective body of the people, and who before, as a subject of the king, is now a citizen of the state. Y'all better listen. Y'all better listen. In closing, there is therefore little ground for the theory that at the time of the adoption of the 14th Amendment of the Constitution of the United States, there as any settled and definite rules of international law generally recognized by the civilized nation and consistent with the ancient rule of the citizenship by birth within the dominion. Nor citizenship by birth within the dominion, nor can it be doubted that it is the inherent right of every independent nation to determine for itself and according to its own constitution and laws what classes of persons should be entitled to its citizenship. You hear that? This is the case law talking about citizenship, and based upon your own constitution, you should be able to determine who are citizens of that nation. All right, not some law you make up for a made-up nation, but a nation that was already represented by the laws that was based upon the laws of that land. Very, very, very important that you make that connection. All right. Both in England and the United States, indeed, statutes have been passed at various times enacting that certain issues born abroad of English subjects or American citizens, respectively, should inherit to the same extent at least the rights of their parents. Okay? So we're talking about just sanguineous and not just soil. Governing rights of their parents. But those statutes apply only to cases coming within their purport, and they have never been considered in either country as affecting the citizenship of a person born within its dominion. The earliest statute was passed in the reign of Edward III and the rules of Parliament of the 17th of Edward III. Do you hear this? It is stated that before these times, there have been great doubt and difficulty among the lords of this realm and the commons, and as well men of the law as others, whether children who are born in parts beyond the sea ought to bear inheritance after the death of their ancestors in England, because no certain law has been therein ordained. And by the kings, lords, and commons, it was unanimously agreed that there was no manner of doubt that the children of our Lord, the king, whether they were born on this side of the sea or beyond the sea, should bear the inheritance of their ancestors. And in regard to other children, it was agreed in this parliament that they also should inherit whatever they might be born in the service of the king. But because Parliament was about to depart, and the business demand great advisement and good deliberation, how it should be best and most surely done, the making of the statute was put off to the next Parliament. Okay, this is the Plantagenet king. All right, the Plantagenet kings. Where are we at? All right. No act was passed by Edward III when Parliament passed an act entitled A Statute for Those Who Are Born in Parts Beyond the Sea, by which, after reciting that some people be in doubt if the children born in parts beyond the sea out of the legions of England should be able to demand any inheritance within the same legions or not, whereof a petition was put in the Parliament of Edward III and has not at this time wholly assented. It was agreed and affirmed that the law of the Crown of England that the law of the Crown of England is and always has been such that the children of the kings of England, in whatever parts they be born, in England or elsewhere, be able and ought to bear the inheritance after death of their ancestors. Two, also agreed that certain persons named which were born beyond the sea out of the legions of England should be from henceforth able to have and enjoy their inheritance after the death of their ancestors in all parts within the legions of England. Did y'all hear this? Let's go up some. The legions of England, as well as those that should be born within the same legions. Three, and further agreed that all children inheritors which from henceforth should be born without the legions of the king, whose fathers and mothers at the time of their birth be and should be at the faith and legions of the king of England, should have and enjoy the same benefit and advantages to have and bear the inheritance within the same legions as the other inheritors aforesaid in time to come. So always that, you hear that? Just talking about prophecy and time to come. So always that the mother of such children do pass the sea by the license and wills of their husbands. Statute of the Rim 310. It has sometimes been suggested that this general provision of the statute of Edward III was declaratory of the common law. But all, let me start right here. But all the suggestions to that effect seem to have been derived immediately or ultimately from one or the others of these two. Of two of sources. The one, the yearbook of Richard. Let me move back a little further down. I got to go back and correct that. It says that the yearbook of Richard III reported a saying of Hussein C.J., Chief Justice, that he who is born beyond the sea, his father and mother are English. Their issue inherited by the common law by the statute makes it clear, which at best was but operative dictum, for the Chief Justice appears to have finally rested his opinion on the said statute. The other notes added to the edition of the 1688 of diary reports 184A, whatever that means, stating that at the Trinity term of Edward III, it was adjudged that children of subjects born beyond the sea in the service of the king were inheritable, which has been shown by a search of the rolls in the king's bench to refer to be a mistake, in as much as a child there is a question did not appear to have been born beyond sea, but only to the living abroad. Edward III recites right here. Edward III recites the existence of doubts as to the rights of foreign-born children to inherit in England. And while it is a declaratory of the rights of children of the king, it is retrospective as to the persons specifically named. Yet as to all other, it is in terms merely prospective, applying to those only who should be born henceforth. Okay, so that's pretty much it. So in closing, to that. Come on, where you at? Okay. So in closing, going back to the legislative by New Jersey and the closing of that legislative synopsis. It clearly states, and I repeat, based upon what we just talked about in this 2 or 3 hour lecture, all right? And this 2 to 3 hour lecture, it clearly states in their closing, whereas the state of Jersey, the governor, and the citizens are conscious that under the slavery, many atrocities and gross violations of human rights were imposed upon African Americans, and that acknowledging these facts can and will avert future tragedies, be they in Sudan or other parts of the world, now and thenceforth. So, in order for you to understand how to stop the servitude that has been going on for thousands of years in regards to the status that we are subject to based upon the civil status, contrast to political status, is a result of us not understanding government. What government? The government of your ancestors. Who are your ancestors? The Anglo-Saxon Berbers. Those ancient gods that were not just on here on this side of the continent as well as on the other side. Okay? Those ancient Berber, Nubian, Kushites. Okay? We are one and the same. But the Kushites, the Nubians, or Black Pharaohs have no present law to actually qualify the ability to be able to revert or remand the estate back to the original heirs as stated in United States versus Juan Kim Ark here on this side of the planet or on that side of the planet. The only way that can be done is go back to the preservation of the estate that was under the authority of the king. And with that, I digress. All right. The floor is open for questions for the cast if they're still there and haven't fallen asleep. And if there are no questions, then I'll close out as I always meet you, and that's in peace and love. So I'll open the floor for questions. Any questions? Any questions? Come on, y'all. Any questions? Somebody got a question. I always say it's better you to not know this than to know this and not follow it because you're going to be held accountable. Okay? Just because you show up on a platform today, just because you intervene, dialogue, etc. All right? It does not guarantee you a spot into the temple. Okay? It does not give you the right to become a national. Everyone wants the rights and benefits of being a national. And the only way you can have those rights and benefits is that you must prove yourself an heir. And the only way you can prove that is by allegiance to the king. All right? And with that, I'm going to greet you as I always greeted you. And that's in the lines of my ancestor, King Edward the Peaceful, in peace and love. And with that, peace.